Chapter 541, A Real Man Faces a Strong Opponent Directly, 6. Hai Jiao. We will finish you off for the Dragon King during this time. The great war between supreme experts on the Huashan summit had struck fear and awe into many people below. Those ancestral sect experts who had feuds with Dragon sect were praying in consternation. Yet, an icy bellow was heard at this time. What? Hai Jiao was slightly stunned, with a surprised and awful look. All the surrounding experts in the underworld were taken aback, too, as they spun around in astonishment. Upon seeing the disciples of Dragon sect stepping forward, they all had a drastic change in expression. What is the Dragon sect doing? Are they clearing away all their enemies? The Dragon King and that middle-aged swordsman are battling with sect leader Ye Wushuang and Emperor Qi of Diabolism in the sky. Don't tell me the Dragon sect is clearing their enemies below. Hai Jiao is on their target board, and he's considered finished. He can only blame his son for it. If the young Lord of Sea Serpent Island hadn't tried to kill the Dragon King, things would not have turned out this way. Death will be their ending. The surrounding crowd was discussing with horror when they saw Dragon sect glowering at Hai Jiao. Hai Jiao's expression took a drastic change, replaced with a malevolent look. He stared daggers at all the people from Dragon sect with frenetic killing intent darting out from his eyes. Kill me. You guys want to kill me? I shall slaughter all of you here today, leaving nothing to remain for the Dragon sect. Hai Jiao released murderous aura as the double horns behind him emerged in his hands. Behind him, his subordinates were also staring coldly at Mo Qinglong and the rest. Now the Dragon King and the other supreme expert are engaged in fights. Yet, you guys are still thinking of killing us. The young Lord of Sea Serpent Island also turned ferocious as if he was a completely different person. Under the pressure of the two supreme experts, their mindset was somewhat twisted. Father, let's kill them all. All of them from the Dragon sect. After that, we'll flee to the sea. I don't believe the Dragon King can find us. The young Lord of Sea Serpent Island growled with insanity in his eyes. That's right. We'll run and hide in the ocean. Not even a supreme expert could find us. Since the Dragon sect is trying to exterminate me, I'll retrieve some interest today. Hai Jiao strode forward with double horns clenched tightly in his hands. Behind him was the sound of tumbling waves. All the surrounding people stared at the shocking move and gasped as they quickly give way to Hai Jiao and his gang. Hai Jiao and his son are crazy. They have gone mad. Mad? How could he not go mad? Hai Jiao is a must-kill on the Dragon King's list. When either the Dragon King or the middle-aged swordsman emerge as the winner, the underworld will belong to the Dragon sect. Hai Jiao will not have any place in underworld. When that time comes, he'll be doomed for sure. He's not going to die in silence. Hai Jiao is going to put up his last resistance and fight back. Seeing Hai Jiao and the young Lord of Sea Serpent Island, all the people sighed. He was the former second strongest in the underworld who had enjoyed glorious moments, an unparalleled expert that no sacred sects would dare to mess with. Now, he was forced to a point that almost drove him crazy. Hayak, I'll wipe the Dragon sect out. I'll see how the Dragon King is going to seek me out in the vast ocean. There was manic killing intent on his face. Before Mo Qinglong and his gang could look for him, he stalked toward them instead. Apart from the Dragon King, Dragon sect seems to have no other Dan realm experts. These disciples of Dragon sect are simply insolent. They don't have any Dan realm experts among them, while Hai Jiao was considered to be the second strongest in the underworld after all. Seriously? Are the disciples of Dragon sect going to get killed by Hai Jiao? The surrounding crowd was surprised as they watched how the event unfolded. Wuya, shall we strike too? Since Dragon sect has no Dan realm expert now, we can just eliminate them easily. Back at Donghua Sacred Sect, an old man clenched his fists tight with murderous intent in his eyes. There was a constant mixed expression on Nye Wuya's face. He craned his head up and watched the war in the sky before turning to Mo Qinglong and the gang again. Suddenly, his eyes were fixed on the members of the Golden Swordfish clan who were holding razor-edged swords in their hands. Seeing their indifferent, unwavering expressions, his eyes narrowed. No, no. Those people look similar to the swordsman named Roving Sword. Nyawuya took a deep breath with eyes fixated on them. That old man was slightly taken aback as he looked over his shoulder and sized up the Dragon Sect's members in bewilderment. Dragon Sect, I'll wipe you guys out completely in the meantime. Hai Jiao repeated what Imo Qinglong had said to him in the exact words as the water current began to circulate frantically around his body. A daunting aura erupted, causing all the martial artists to stagger back in horror. Seeing Hai Jiao walking over with guts, trying to kill them off, Imo Qinglong was slightly surprised, but there was a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. Senior brothers, that Hai Jiao is a Dan realm expert. Please help us out. Imo Qinglong quirked his lips slightly as he spoke to the few golden swordfish beside him. Leave it to us. A golden swordfish nodded coldly. When they witnessed Hai Jiao and his men striding over with malevolent expressions, no emotions were found in their eyes. Go to hell, everyone from Dragon Sect. Fuck you all. Hai Jiao growled ferociously as he strode. The water energy was circulating madly around him. All the people within a few kilometers could hear the tumbling waves in the body of Hai Jiao. Under such daunting pressure, Hai Jiao had exploded even stronger combat power than ever before. Hai Jiao's strength is scary. He's too strong, way beyond any average Dan realm expert. He's indeed the former second strongest in the underworld. Oh no, the disciples of Dragon Sect were acting way too brazen, just like their Dragon King. They thought Hai Jiao would be wary of the Dragon King, and dare not strike. But even a rabbit will bite if it panics. Sensing the domineering strength from Hai Jiao, the surrounding crowd was looking shocked in their eyes. However, more people were staring at the Golden Swordfish gang with their long swords in their hands. Simply because they looked like Roving Sword. Could it be? Slaying Spiritual Sword. Return of the Spiritual Sword. Just when all the people had their own thoughts, two icy cold voices were heard. Just like the cold voice of the compelling swordsman in the sky. A spiritual sword that was 100 meters long lurched forward with unparalleled sharp radiance. Another spiritual sword of the same size with the same sharpness darted out from behind and returned. Two frightful golden radiances rushed out from the front and the back. The return of the spiritual sword. Chapter 542, Void Space Shattered. 1. Pa. What? This. What a horrifying sword. I could barely control the long sword in my hand. In an instant, all the surrounding swordsmen felt their treasured swords shaking violently. They held onto their long swords in horror while looking ahead of them. 2 sword strikes. Charge and return. They were from 2 different people. Arg! When the sword was released, the group of subordinates behind the Lord of Sea Serpent Island were instantly killed by the returning sword. They couldn't put up any resistance at all. That terrifying edge easily penetrated their bodies. What? The Lord of Sea Serpent Island was flabbergasted. The moment the 2 swords appeared, a deathly threat had him surrounded and sent chills down his spine. No! Father, save me! At this moment, the young Lord of Sea Serpent Island cried for help in horror. No! Dragon Sect, I won't let you off even if I die. The Lord of Sea Serpent Island held on to the 2 horns and roared loudly with a contorted expression resembling a wretched demon. Terrifying water energy was contained within the 2 horns. He spread both of his arms towards the approaching swords from the front and back. The charging sword and the returning sword were simply too fast. There was no time for the Lord of Sea Serpent Island to escape. Moreover, he had his son with him. He couldn't just leave him behind. Hai Long stood before the Lord of Sea Serpent Island, shivering in fear. Rumble. 2 extreme swords emitted dazzling golden light that shrouded the Lord of Sea Serpent Island and his son. Arg! I'm not convinced. A blinding light exploded from where Hai Jiao was. The surrounding crowd couldn't help but shut their eyes and turn their heads around. Nothing. Nothing is left. At this moment, a surprised scream broke the silence. Everyone turned towards the location where the Lord of Sea Serpent Island was previously. All of them were dumbfounded. Nothing. There was indeed nothing left. There were no signs of humans at all. The Lord of Sea Serpent Island was completely crushed by the swords. Not even his ashes remain. A Dan realm expert from a sacred clan was filled with horror as he looked blankly at where Hai Jiao was standing previously. What a terrifying sword glow. They are all terrifying Dan realm experts. Why would there be so many terrifying experts appearing from the dragon sect? A sect leader of a sacred sect looked in the direction of the dragon sect while shivering in fear. The two middle-aged men that had struck previously put away their swords. With a sword from each of them, they had killed the previous number 2 expert of the underworld. Gulp. Everyone couldn't help but swallow back a mouthful of saliva. Is this the full strength of the dragon sect? How many Dan realm experts do they have? Cold sweat broke out on the foreheads of some people. Nya Wuya and the experts from Donghua Sacred Sect could feel their hearts palpitating violently as their vision dulled. They were afraid that the dragon sect would target them now and annihilate the entire Donghua Sacred Sect. They were even more afraid after seeing how terrifying the Dan realm swordsmen from the dragon sect were. That would only mean that the supreme swordsman fighting with their sect leader was even more insane. Would their sect leader win against that swordsman in battle? Amitba. It's better for the underworld to have fewer killings. Amitba. At the location of diabolism, all the devil sects could feel their hearts skip a beat when they witnessed the 2 experts from the dragon sect killing a powerful Dan realm expert with a sword each. Even the powerful Dan realm experts from the Devil Corpse Palace were deeply fearful. As for the devil monks from the Devil Spirits Temple, they could only recite Amitba and pray. At this moment, everyone in the crowd was looking towards dragon sect in fear. Too strong. Too strong. Even without the Dragon King, the disciples of the dragon sect could still crush the entire underworld. No one would be a match for them. In a deserted area at the bottom of the tallest peak of Huashan, Sunner had become the most frenzied fan of the dragon sect. She exclaimed loudly with excitement. The lady beside her pursed her lips and was filled with astonishment. Despite the Dragon King being engaged in battle, the remaining dragon sect could still suppress the entire underworld. This was the most fearsome thing about the dragon sect. Oh gosh! Look! What's that? What's that? The void space is shattering. Their battles are shattering the void space. At this moment, an exclamation broke the silence and caught everyone's attention. The crowd immediately looked over. At this moment, Nya Wushuang and Roving Sword had entered into close-range battle mode in the air. Within a radius of 1,000 meters of their battle, dense sword glows filled the air. Both their bodies were emitting golden rays like a blinding sun. Each clash would crush the surrounding sword glows. The terrifying battle closely resembled the coming of Ragnarok. Bam! Once again, Nya Wushuang clashed together with Roving Sword. Terrifying metal attribute energy tore an opening in the void space. This tear was roughly a meter long. When the tear appeared, even Nya Wushuang was filled with horror. He looked in horror at the world within the tear in the void space. Subconsciously, he recalled a record he had read in a secret book previously. Could it be? Nya Wushuang's eyes constricted as he shouted, "Arg!" Bam! It was another violent clash followed by Nya Wushuang and Roving Sword separating rapidly. Ha! Roving Sword had also noticed that terrifying tear in the void space. Doubt filled his eyes. Oh gosh! That's really a tear in the void space. It is said that when one reaches the immortal realm, he can rip a tear in the void space. Could their battle be the reason why the void space was ripped apart? Below the battle, the crowd couldn't help but exclaim after witnessing the tear. This was a tear in the void space. A tear in the void space? No. Budding realm experts would never be able to rip a tear in void space. Even immortal realm experts would find it to be extremely difficult to do so. The Dan realm experts stared vigilantly at the 1-meter-long tear. All of them were shocked. Undoubtedly, there was indeed a tear in the void space. Boom! At this moment, Wang Xian controlled the nether skull. From the eyes of the nether skull, extreme flames from the Inferno Divine Dragon and the Will-O-Wisps had coalesced. The combined flames were extremely viscous and thick as they swept towards Emperor Qi, who had used the binary corpse's cogenesis. Rumble! Emperor Qi's terrifying claws fell on the surface of the nether skull. The terrifying impact sent earth-shattering shockwaves across. After each collision, a crack would appear before them. A tinge of surprise and shock flashed in Emperor Qi's blood-red eyes. He pivoted and appeared 1,000 meters away within seconds while staring at that tear. Wang Xian also frowned as he observed the tear in the void space. Their battle had torn the fabric of space. Wang Xian was doubtful. The tear appeared for 1 second and disappeared in the next. Could their terrifying battle reach the level where they could rip apart the fabric of space? Seeing the cracks of space between the battle of Emperor Qi and the Dragon King, the crowd from the underworld was dumbfounded. Chapter 543, Void Space Shattered. 2. The battle stopped briefly because of the crack in the void space. Nie Wushuang and Emperor Qi squinted their eyes as they peered at the location where the crack appeared. As old freaks who had lived for over 2 centuries, they were much more knowledgeable than Wang Xian. They had heard of some legends and secrets in the underworld. Given their current strength, it was impossible for them to make a crack in the void space. There was only one possibility left if it wasn't the void space crack. It was the crack of an array. Nie Wushuang squinted his eyes and surveyed the surroundings with a grave expression. Emperor Qi did the same thing, too, as he revealed a pondering look. Wang Xian witnessed the diminishing crack in the void space, and his curiosity was piqued. Blue and red radiance began to flicker in his eyes. Overwhelming energy filled the landscape. Is it an array? Did our battle trigger some array over here? But this array should be a type of defense or concealing array. Wang Xian used his piercing eyes to survey the surroundings and pondered to himself. He stood on top of Nether Skull, looking towards Emperor Qi and Nie Wushuang after coming out of the Nether Skull. What is it? Do you guys know something about this? Emperor Qi looked at Wang Xian coldly without a word. Nie Wushuang, too, replied with nothing as he swept cold gazes at Wang Xian and Roving Sword. Since there are no answers from both of you, let's continue. A tinge of a sneer flashed across Wang Xian's eyes. Nie Wushuang and Emperor Qi obviously knew something, but neither of them was willing to divulge anything. Since neither of them spoke, then the fight shall continue. He would be able to get some information after killing them. Wang Xian submerged himself into the Nether Skull, and flames burst out from the skull once again. The daunting flame from the Inferno Dragon and Nether Flame shrouded the area within 1,000 meters. Upon seeing the domineering flame exploded from Nether Skull, Emperor Qi had the same grave expression on his face again. Clang! Along with thousands of beams of sword radiance behind him, Roving Sword swung his long sword in the sky, pointing at Nie Wushuang. Phew, I must kill you. Nie Wushuang exhibited a resolute look. There were 2 supreme experts in Dragon Sect. So long as the 2 remained alive, there would be a high possibility that Donghua Sacred Sect would get annihilated. Hence, he had to kill one of them. Nie Wushuang spun the long blade in his hand with the rings on it clashing against each other again. Kill! Killing intent surged in Wang Xian. When fighting with supreme experts, he needed to give his best, especially when he did not transform into a divine dragon. Also, the strength of Emperor Qi was not as strong as he had imagined. Compared to the budding realm expert he had met in Dubai, Emperor Qi was weaker by little. On top of that, the Nether Flame had a natural suppression for Emperor Qi. Wang Xian was confident that he could defeat Emperor Qi without turning into a divine dragon. even though most of the time he was just relying on the daunting power of the nether skull. The skull that was almost 6 meters in size was burning with a frightful flame in the sky. Its mouth was wide open as it lurched forward toward Emperor Qi. With binary corpses cogenesis, Emperor Qi revealed a solemn look. He raised his scary-looking nails at Wang Xian and darted out. At this time, he was facing the same plight as Nie Wuxuan. There was no retreating. Once he backed off, it would mark the failure of all of diabolism. The underworld would belong to Dragon's sect, and diabolism would have to hold the Dragon King as their supreme leader. Otherwise, they would be annihilated by Dragon's sect. Therefore, he had to kill Wang Xian off so that diabolism would not be under his suppression. With one of the supreme experts from Dragon's sect dead, they could create a situation of tripartite confrontation. At the very least, they would not need to succumb to anyone. Boom boom. Every strike of Emperor Qi's that landed on the nether skull sounded horrible as they left white traces on the surface of the nether skull. Yet, the demonic aura was rapidly diminishing under the burning fire of the nether flame. Even the skin on his arm had turned gray. Today, I shall slay you, Dragon King. Emperor Qi revealed bloody red, terrifying glow in his eyes with each blow that impacted the nether skull. His body was spinning at a high speed around the skull. As a zombie, his physical strength was incredibly scary. The nether flame followed like a shadow as it pounced onto Emperor Qi without stopping. The destructive power of the flame had caused the arm of Emperor Qi to be left with just bones. On the outside, it looked incredibly creepy. Wang Xian stood within the nether skull, looking out at Emperor Qi with cold eyes. Even if he dragged it on, he could undoubtedly bring Emperor Qi down. Binary corpses cogenesis, heaven and earth crumple. After dodging the nether flame, Emperor Qi rose higher to the sky. In a split second, he had risen to an altitude of 10,000 meters. From the audience's view below, Emperor Qi had already disappeared from sight. Binary corpses cogenesis, heaven and earth crumple. It's that move. It's that move. At this time, a group of Devil Corpse Palace experts watched the disappearing of Emperor Qi in the sky with excitement in their eyes. They fixed their eyes on the sky. Is this his best move? Wang Xian witnessed Emperor Qi lifting himself up while his body spun rapidly. He intended to swoop down with such a stance. There were 2 arms and 2 heads glaring at him coldly. The demonic aura around him pumped up, just like a growing tornado. He was going to charge down at such frightful speed. What horror! He's going to swoop down from that height. In that case, both Emperor Qi and the Ghoul King could attack at the same time. With that horrifying spinning demonic aura that reached a few thousand meters high, it is as good as a tornado made by demonic aura. Back on the land, everyone was focusing on the central position where the daunting demonic aura spun like a tornado, concealing the entire sky. It was about to strike from a high point in the air. This was the true blue devil that descended on the world. This could be the strongest move that Emperor Qi has. Does he want to determine the winner now? All the people from the crowd were staring hard at the sky with uneasiness. Since that's the case, let's give our last blow of attack. Wang Xian revealed a smile. Making a swift movement, he appeared below the nether skull. With both Wang Xian's arms swinging, all the nether flame exploded out from the nether skull. A bone-crushing sound was heard from the skull as though it was going to collapse at any moment. Boom! The nether skull charged out at Emperor Qi like a meteor. Wang Xian was not concerned as to whether the nether skull would be damaged under such a formidable impact. This thing was just a secondary weapon, and the nether flame in the skull would continue to dissipate in combat. Hence, it needed constant replenishment. The only way to replenish it was at the cost of lives. This was somewhat troublesome for Wang Xian. Destroy! Insane fighting spirit overflowed from the eyes of Emperor Qi. With domineering strength and demonic aura, he charged at the nether skull. You're no match for me. Meanwhile, Roving Sword's longsword was slashed down on the long blade of Nie Wuxuan. The two of them staggered back for 1,000 meters. Roving Sword took a deep breath. With slow motions, he grabbed the long sword with both hands and pointed it at Nie Wuxiang. "I'll not be defeated." Nie Wuxiang raged as golden beams of light fired out from his body. Chapter 544, Void Space Shattered, 3. The outcome will be decided soon. Oh gosh! The critical juncture is finally here. I wonder who will win. From what the middle-aged swordsman said, Nie Wuxiang isn't a match for him. Could it be that sect leader Nie Wuxiang is about to lose? The moment that will decide the fate of the entire underworld has arrived. The sky was shaking and the crowd at the bottom of the tallest peak of Huashan looked at the catastrophic final battles above them in shock. The battles had reached the most critical moment and the outcome would be known soon. There's no way our sect leader will lose. Never. Everyone in Donghua's sacred sect mumbled to themselves as they looked up bitterly. However, they had a bad premonition weighing over them. In the previous exchanges, that terrifying and merciless swordsman had the upper hand against their sect leader all along. Moreover, they would probably have a good glimpse of the opponent's strength after such a long battle. If the invincible swordsman claimed that Nie Wuxiang wasn't a match for him, he should be at least 70% sure that victory was his. This worried everyone in Donghua's sacred sect. Similarly, all the people of Diabolism looked fearfully towards the sky. Their backs were drenched in perspiration from anxiety. My sword will split the earth. My sword will shake the heavens. My sword will shock the world. Rampaging heaven and earth strike. All the golden hair on Nie Wuxiang stood up like golden needles. The sword in his hands shook violently. As the rings hit the blade, sounds of metal clashing reverberated. Terrifying sword glows formed a violent storm of heaven and earth strikes. The sword glow grew larger and larger to several thousand meters long. This blade seemed capable of splitting the sky and earth. The golden glow from the sword resonated with the metal on the ground. The pinnacle strike of the golden swordfish race. Seeing Nie Wuxiang launching his strongest attack, Roving Sword was unmoved. He held on to his long sword with both hands. Before the golden swordfish race had transformed into human form, they only knew a certain type of attack. That was none other than lunging ahead with the terrifying bill to pierce through their opponents and enemies. And now, Roving Sword wasn't using the ancient spiritual sword technique, but the attack that the golden swordfish race had used millions and millions of times. The pinnacle strike. Holding the long sword with both hands above his head, he turned into a long sword and charged towards Nie Wuxiang with tremendous speed. The moment he charged forward, an illusory image of a golden swordfish could be seen around Roving Sword. Just like an ancient god fish, he released an insane sword glow. Rampaging heaven and earth strike, slash. Nie Wuxiang growled loudly and his voice reverberated throughout Huashan. They are going to clash. The outcome will be revealed soon. That's too scary. Too scary. Move back. Move back. My senses are telling me that the terrifying energy will even reach us. In the air, the terrifying energy of the binary corpse's cogenesis, catastrophic annihilation clashed intensely with the black flames of the nether skull. The rampaging heaven and earth strike that shrouded the sky was about to crash into the blinding pinnacle strike. Everyone's heart was in their throat. Boom! An explosion erupted and reverberated across the sky. Below them, the tallest peak of Huashan seemed to be cracking from the insane energy and pressure. The nether skull is cracking. However, Emperor Qi definitely can't withstand this strike. As Wang Xian saw, the nether skull was cracking slowly. For a level 12 weapon to crack under pressure, one could imagine how insane the power behind that strike was. What? However, sounds of glass breaking could be heard at this moment. To Wang Xian's astonishment, the sky above where Emperor Qi and the nether skull clashed was shattering like a piece of glass. The crack this time was much larger than the one before. It was as though their clash had broken the limits. Arg! Bam! Bam! After a terrifying cry, Wang Xian could see Emperor Qi overwhelmed by horrifying attacks. As for the nether skull, it had completely cracked open under a unique form of energy. Shit! The spirit array of the cauldron world has been broken by us. At this moment, Nya Wushuang's horrified voice resounded. Wang Xian was alarmed and looked over immediately. At the place where Nya Wushuang clashed with Roving Sword, the void space had been split open completely. Both of them were sucked into the crack. Wang! At this moment, Wang Xian felt an immense attractive force pulling him away. It was as though he had encountered a black hole pulling his body. Wang Xian was astonished but couldn't put up any resistance at all. His body was sucked into the cracks of the void space directly. This greatly surprised him. Screech, screech, screech. The entire sky seemed to be tumbling. The martial artists below were all shocked and dumbfounded. The space was shattered. The void space was completely shattered and the four supreme experts have been sucked into a different dimension. What is this all about? What's the cauldron world that sect leader Nya Wushuang talked about at the very end? What is that? Oh gosh! The shattered space is fixing itself gradually. Could it be that sect leader Nya Wushuang, Emperor Qi, Dragon King and that swordsman have entered a different world? All the martial artists of the underworld were shocked. Bewilderment. Bewilderment. The sky was shattered like a piece of glass in the battles between the four supreme experts. Four supreme experts were sucked into it directly. This. Before the astounded eyes of the people, the glass-like space was recovering and gradually returned to how it had been before. The sky was clear once again. Wang! At this very moment, the entire world seemed to be shaking. In the vast sky, a cauldron hovered in the air. However, it disappeared the next instant. Everyone looked blankly at this mystical scene with their jaws dropped. The 9 cauldrons. That's one of the 9 cauldrons that stabilized the nation in the past and have since disappeared. Nya Wuya looked blankly at the space that was self-repairing, the appearance and disappearance of the cauldron. His eyes widened as he mumbled to himself. 9 cauldrons? Sect leader has gone missing. What kind of space is that? Where would it lead to? What could that place be? An old man beside Nya Wuya couldn't contain his doubts and roared loudly. In the Xia dynasty, the 9 cauldrons were forged. In the past, the 9 cauldrons stabilized and ensured the stability of the country. In the legends, each cauldron was a terrifying immortal item. However, the 9 cauldrons disappeared 1,000+ years ago. The sect leader once told me that it wasn't just the 9 cauldrons that disappeared. The immortal sects also disappeared. Nya Wuya mumbled and didn't hide anything he knew. His voice resounded throughout the crowd. What's an immortal sect? Could there really be real immortals as recorded in the legends? Could it be there's a different world that coexists along with us? A middle-aged man exclaimed loudly. An immortal sect wasn't rare in ancient times. The reason why they were called immortal sects was because they had an immortal. Those above the budding realm are known as immortals. Based on what our sect leader has told me, the immortal sect brought along the 9 cauldrons to gather spiritual energy and left behind the world to avoid the age of Dharma decline. Chapter 545, The World of 9 Cauldrons. The highest peak of Huashan was now in a mess. The peak that was in the clouds had been shortened by more than 1,000 meters while the entire mountain had a horrible-looking crack. Back at the foot of the mountain, everyone looked in the direction of Donghua Sacred Sect in silence. As the breeze ran across their skin, it brought hair-raising chillness. Space was cast aside without any worldly care to gather the spiritual energy. It was a way to avoid the age of Dharma decline. Nya Wuya gravely continued his speech. According to the legend, the experts from the immortal sects sensed the diminishing spiritual energy of heaven and earth. For the development of immortal sects, they used the immortal treasure, 9 cauldrons, to set aside a space. This space that was guarded by 9 cauldrons, gathering all the spiritual energy, has turned into the legendary immortal realm. I guess sect leader and the rest have entered the 9 cauldrons worlds. The so-called Nine Cauldrons worlds are separate lands of peace that are isolated by the arrays? Asked the old man beside Nyawuya in a murmur. Each of the 9 cauldrons sets aside a world, and 9 cauldrons set aside 9 worlds in total. That is to say, there are 9 independent immortal realms within and around our country. Nyawuya nodded his head slowly. Can't the people from the 9 cauldrons worlds come out? Or can't we enter into the 9 cauldrons worlds? A Dan realm expert from a sacred clan could not help but ask. I don't know. I really have no idea. Nyawuya shook his head in bitterness. The 9 cauldrons guard 9 separate worlds that are namely Shenyuan, Ji, Huang, Yao, Shun, Yu, Tang, Xia, and Yongchang. As the 9 cauldrons gather spiritual energy, the cultivation speed within the world is faster by 4 to 5 times as compared to the outside world. Within 9 cauldrons worlds, there are many experts, including those in the immortal realm. Access to these worlds has been closed since 300 years ago. It was impossible to enter the 9 cauldrons worlds. That also marked extreme difficulties for people to come out as well. Unless you have the immortal treasure, along with immortal prowess, you will not be able to walk out of 9 cauldrons worlds. However, the 9 cauldrons have been suppressing the spiritual chi for over 1,000 years. When there is insufficient energy for the 9 cauldrons to gather, there will be a day when the 9 cauldrons worlds will emerge once again. Suddenly, a graceful yet haughty voice was heard, stunning everyone. All of them looked to the source of it. A girl beside the guild leader of Sacred Followers Guild lifted her chin as she spoke with pride. She seemed to be flaunting her knowledge. Hee, my disciple knows everything from astronomy to geography, the guild leader of Sacred Followers Guild explained to everyone with a smile. What does a kid know? An inborn expert of Donghua sacred sect pouted in disbelief. Who is the kid here? Who said I don't know anything? This world over here at Huashan is called Yongchang. There are 3 immortal sects in it which are called Yongchang Immortal Sect, Immortal Slaying Sect, and Dahong Immortal Sect. Humph, shut your mouth if you don't know anything. Upon hearing someone challenging her, the lass was so furious that she growled at that inborn expert. You lass! Dong Wen, shut up! Before that inborn expert could finish his sentence, he was cut off by Nyawuya's cold bellow. This caught him by surprise as he quickly kept his mouth shut and looked over. He saw that Nyawuya had disbelief in his eyes, staring at that little girl with glistening eyes. Yongchang, Immortal Slaying, and Dahong were not fictitious sects made up by the ancient people? Of course not. Not even Penglai Immortal Island. That's the place guarded by Yu Cauldron. You bunch of ignorant fellows, what do you know? 2. The little girl did not give any face to Nyawuya as she spoke with contempt in his face. However, Nyawuya's emotions were stirred up, and he did not mind her rudeness. He murmured, little did I expect what sect leader told me to all be true. It's real. Immortal sect, there are immortal sects in this world. What do the 9 cauldrons worlds look like? Some of them mumbled as they craned their necks to look up at the sky above Huashan. There lay a hidden world known as Yongchang. Could the immortals who can ride on swords and kill someone from 1,000 miles away, driving on a cloud and somersaulting 1,000 miles, could they really exist? Some of the people were looking forward to it. Little girl, do you think our sect leader has a chance of coming out from the Yongchang world? Asked Nyawuya with a solemn expression after taking a deep breath. If he was not killed by that swordsman, I guess he should have a chance of coming out. The little girl was not very sure, so she casually mentioned it. After all, he has already advanced to the budding realm and is considered to be an expert in 9 cauldrons worlds. But it is uncertain when he will come out. Maybe a few years or even more than that. It should be soon. Is that so? Nyawuya and all the people from Donghua sacred sect felt relieved. The group from Diabolism also wiped the sweat away from their foreheads. Looks like the 9 cauldrons worlds are not as scary as one imagined. There are supreme experts everywhere. Sect leader Nyawushuang, Emperor Qi, Dragon King, and the middle-aged swordsman already possess daunting powers. If they are not considered experts in that world, that would be too scary. Someone above the budding realm is known to be an immortal. That means to say, there are immortals and immortal sects in these worlds. Perhaps the inborn experts are everywhere, and Dan realm experts make up the highest number of people there. That would be too crazy. 9 cauldrons refer to 9 worlds. I wonder what kind of worlds they are, and what kind of encounters sect leader Nye Wushuang will be met with. Everyone was discussing fervently as the 9 cauldrons worlds opened a new horizon for them. 9 cauldrons worlds are too far from us. Nye Wuya and the rest of the experts looked blankly at the sky above Huashan. Let's postpone the battle between the orthodox sects and diabolism. From now on, we will not cross each other's paths. If you dare to provoke us, it will be the time when a bloodbath arises in Underworld. Nye Wuya paused for a few minutes as he called out while looking in the direction of Devil Corpse Palace. Fine. Diabolism will not attack anyone from the alliance of the orthodox sects within the next 5 years unless you guys attack us first. That goes without saying. An expert from Devil Corpse Palace pondered as he nodded while looking at all the experts of diabolism. Now they had a pact for 5 years. Great. At the same time, all the experts from the alliance of the orthodox sects and diabolism looked toward Dragon Sect. The reason for the peace between orthodox sects and diabolism was because of the uncertain factor, Dragon Sect. Now, the 3 forces were restraining one another. The day our Dragon King returns will be the day Dragon Sect fights the Underworld. Mo Qinglong lifted his head and spoke to them in a flat voice. Phew! Upon hearing Mo Qinglong, Donghua Sacred Sect and Diabolism heaved a sigh of relief. It's a good thing for you guys, Dragon Sect, to stop finding our troubles. Regardless of the alliance of the orthodox sects or diabolism, they were all wonderstruck by Dragon Sect. The 2 swordsmen with charging sword and return sword had killed the former second expert in the underworld within split seconds. None from the underworld could take on such formidable swordsmanship. From then on, since Nye Wushuang, Emperor Qi, Dragon King, and the middle-aged swordsman entered the Yongchang world through the crack in the air, the underworld split into 3 forces pinned against each other. Chapter 546, Arrival of the Dragon. The underworld will likely have a peaceful period for some time. That's right. Everyone will probably be wary of the Dragon Sect. Damn! The strength displayed by the Dragon Sect today is truly insane. Towards the end of the battle, it was clear that sect leader Nye Wushuang had lost. Also, it was impossible for Emperor Qi to win. This was because the Dragon King was still standing 1,000 meters away while watching the battle develop. If it wasn't for the void space shattering today, the Dragon Sect would have ruled supreme. How did the Dragon King get so terrifying? He's just going to be 21 years old this year. When the Dragon King returns, the underworld will likely be under the Dragon Sect. I wonder, when will the Dragon King and the rest return? Hee hee. It's actually pretty good to have the Dragon Sect and Dragon King. Those they have killed were those that offended him or were from diabolism. The Dragon King has not killed an innocent without reason. For small characters like us, there's nothing bad about this. After the battles of the supreme experts at the tallest peak of Huashan, all the martial artists in the underworld didn't stay for long as they headed for the exit. The crowd discussed what had happened today excitedly. The major battles today had greatly enhanced their views of the world. Mo Qinglong and the rest from the Dragon Sect took a further glance at the space that the Dragon King had been sucked into. The next moment, they took flight and headed towards Rivertown. Protect the Dragon Sect till the Dragon King returns. As Dragonians and members of the Dragon Palace, they could still sense the existence of their Dragon King. This would mean that the Dragon King had not died. As long as the Dragon King was alive, they believed that he would return soon. They weren't worried about it in the slightest. Soon, all the martial artists of the underworld had departed from the tallest peak of Huashan. What was left was the ruined tallest peak of Huashan, which had cracked, and destruction that spanned over 1,000 meters. Amidst the mountain range, the land looked uniquely wretched. Who would have expected that guy to be so strong? Budding realm. Even my other brothers are a far cry in terms of talent compared to him. At the foot of the mountain of Huashan, 2 people remained. One was a young girl while the other was the guild leader of the Sacred Followers Guild. Hee. I had not expected the Dragon King to have such exceptional talents either. It's truly frightening. Hee. Xiao, do you think the Dragon King could become an immortal? The guild leader of the Sacred Followers Guild asked that little girl. There's a high possibility. That little girl was recalcitrant, but it was hard for her to not be convinced by Wang Xian. She pouted and added, I do feel that the middle-aged swordsman has a higher chance of reaching the immortal realm. His swordsmanship is really powerful. The guild leader of the Sacred Followers Guild nodded his head silently before asking, shall we go in? Yes, master. Just follow me back. After all, it won't be long till we can enter and leave as we wish. Cultivation there will be 4 to 5 times quicker than here. At locations where the immortal sects are, it will be 7 to 8 times quicker. Since we have gathered the required information, let's get back. The little girl nodded her head, held on to the hands of the guild leader of the Sacred Followers Guild and answered. Alright, I'd like to take a look at the legendary land of the immortals, the world of Yongchang. The eyes of the guild leader of the Sacred Followers Guild were filled with anticipation. Hee. Let's go then, the little girl replied with a smile. In her hands, she held several iPads. In them, there was a range of information on the current society. This was something that her father had asked her to gather when she was sent to modern society. This was done in preparation for when Yongchang descended on the current world. They were various bits of information on the current lifestyles and their technology. The little brat led the guild leader of the Sacred Followers Guild to the peak of a mountain and rubbed a blue spiritual item on her neck. Wang! Suddenly, 2 pairs of terrifying arms appeared. 4 palms with fiery red gloves ripped apart the space of an area. Xiao, hurry! A voice came from the other end. The little girl jumped in immediately without hesitation. The guild leader of the Sacred Followers Guild was shocked to witness this. 4 huge hands had ripped apart the space directly. He had no doubts that the energy in those hands could easily crush him to death. Pa. When he entered it, he fell towards the land immediately. The guild leader of the Sacred Followers Guild was surprised to see the 2 pairs of fiery red gloves being destroyed by the spirit array instantly. While he was still in shock, a huge flaming palm appeared below them and led them towards a direction. All these actions were like those one would envision of an immortal. What the little girl didn't know was the exorbitant price of entering the Yongchang world. Although 4 to 5 budding realm experts could rip apart space, they would suffer terrifying attacks when they entered. The intensity of these attacks would be dependent on the strength of the martial artist. Even the powerful immortal realm experts wouldn't dare to. This was because the fatality rate was 90% and no one would like to take this risk. As for the 2 pairs of flaming gloves that had exploded previously, those were level 12 spiritual equipment. This was the price for allowing the 2 of them to enter. Just a while ago, Wang Xian had suffered attacks from the spirit array as he entered. The terrifying force sent chills down his spine. The destructive attacks made Wang Xian feel like he was going to be torn apart. However, Wang Xian was a divine dragon after all and had the body of a divine dragon. Before he felt he would collapse, he realized he had made it through. Nonetheless, his body was severely injured by the attacks. Before he could exhaust dragon energy to heal himself, he lost consciousness and fell to the ground. Yongchang world was the world suppressed by the Yongchang cauldron. The entire world wasn't huge and was roughly the size of a large province in China. Or roughly the size of South Korea. There were 3 immortal sects in Yongchang world and they were Yongchang Immortal Sect, Immortal Slaying Sect and the Dahong Immortal Sect. Yongchang Immortal Sect specialized in fire attribute, Dahong Immortal Sect specialized in water attribute, and Immortal Slaying Sect was known for their metal attribute sword cultivators. Together with the 3 immortal sects were 7 to 8 smaller sections. Dahong Immortal Sect was located in the middle of a mountain range. The tallest mountain could reach a height of roughly 5,000 meters, which was twice the height of Huashan. Rumbling sounds were incessant throughout the mountain range where Dahong Immortal Sect was located. Waterfall. There are waterfalls everywhere that start from the highest peak. Chirp chirp chirp. Spiritual birds flew in the sky. The water of the waterfall was exceptionally clear with fishes occasionally emerging. Birds swooped down from the sky and scooped the fish away as prey. Bam! A bird that was entirely white and almost a meter in size stood at the highest peak while staring vigilantly at the fishes before the waterfall. Just as it was about to swoop down, a figure dropped from the sky. The white bird was shocked and stared blankly at that figure which floated down the waterfall. Splitting the water while maintaining the water in its position for 5 seconds is the benchmark of gaining great mastery of Dahong sword technique. The results of all your assessments previously are generally below average. Practice diligently over this period. Below a waterfall, a lady stood in the middle and the water separated onto 2 sides automatically. Around her, several 20-odd-year-old young men and girls held long swords in their hands while slashing at the waterfall. Arg! At this moment, a horrifying scream resounded. A girl was horrified to see a figure falling from the waterfall before her. The arrival of the dragon. Chapter 547, Genius? Demon? 1. Mum, why did you bring him home? It's such an inconvenience to have a guy living in our house. We don't even know who he is. Don't you think it's inappropriate to have him in our house? He almost startled me to death today. Let's find out where he comes from and send him back immediately. While Wang Xian was in a trance, he heard a female voice. He frowned as he made a slight movement. His entire body was in pain as though it was going to break at once. Self-healing with dragon energy. Wang Xian made a thought. Self-healing will consume 1.97 million points of dragon energy. Continue. Damn, why is it so expensive again? Wang Xian twisted his expression a little. With a thought, he checked his own injuries and decided to use 500,000 points of dragon energy for a simple treatment. Linger, since he fell in Emifengyu, we cannot leave him there. I'll get an ancestral sect to check his identity and send him back. In order to treat him, we have already consumed a lot of resources from Emifengyu. Well. Stop speaking, lass. If your strength can achieve advancement, our Emifengyu will definitely receive more resources. Mum, I'll work hard. The voices outside continued to confuse Wang Xian. Where is this place? Void space shattered. Did I come to the world within the array, or? All sorts of thoughts flashed in Wang Xia's mind. He remembered the last battle scene clearly, when he was sucked into the array when it gave way. Arg! Mum, he's up. He's awake. Just then, a voice came screaming again, which Wang Xian found somewhat familiar. Subsequently, Wang Xian saw a lady and a girl walking toward him. The lady was charming, and he could only tell that she was mature and well-developed through her figure. There were no signs of aging on her face. The girl was around 22 to 23 years old, and she resembled the lady a lot. Yet, she was glaring at Wang Xian now with a face full of displeasure. Both of them wore some ancient clothing, which was unlike the modern style. Are you awake? The lady looked to Wang Xian as she flicked her finger, sending a stream of water current into Wang Xian's body. Are your injuries serious? Which sect are you from? I'll get someone to send you back, said the lady, looking at Wang Xian. Wang Xian froze for a moment as he did not answer the question of the lady, where is this place? He spun his head around, studying the surroundings as he asked with confusion. This is the Dahong Immortal Sect. Which sect are you from? Immortal Slaying or Yongchang? Or some other smaller sect? Asked the lady to Wang Xian plainly as she walked to the bed. Dahong Immortal Sect? Immortal Slaying? Yongchang? Wang Xian continued with his quizzical look. He felt like he had really entered into a strange world within that array. Don't tell me you have amnesia. And you forgot which sect you are from. Seeing his reaction, the girl at the side stalked over and scrutinized him. Looks like I have really entered into the world within the array. Wang Xian stared blankly at the ancient character embroidered on the girl's clothes as he was in a trance. Hey, I'm asking you a question. Did you lose your memory? Or are you a mute? The girl was displeased and yelled at Wang Xian since she could not get any answer from him. Wang Xian looked up to that girl. I think I lost my memory. The girl almost choked upon hearing his answer. This was the first time she saw someone admit that they had lost their memory in such a relaxed manner. Is this how someone with amnesia should act? Mom, look at him. He doesn't seem to be a good guy, and he does not have amnesia. He clearly wants to. The girl stared at Wang Xian furiously as she spoke to the lady beside her. The lady furrowed her brows slightly as she looked at Wang Xian. Don't you know De Hong Immortal Sect, Immortal Slaying Sect, or Yongchang Immortal Sect? I have no idea. Wang Xian shook his head and continued voicing his doubt. What is this place? We're at Yongchang. What do you remember? The lady fixed her flickering eyes on Wang Xian. Yongchang. My name is Wang Xian, and others call me the Dragon King. Yongchang. Wang Xian continued to look perplexed. Where is Yongchang exactly? A world within the array? Dragon King. Can you tumble the river or overturn the sea? The girl was slightly stunned by Wang Xian's words, but subsequently, she rebutted him with contempt. That's enough, Linger. Wang Xian, right? Take a rest now and see if you can recall anything. You may stay here for the time being, said the lady to Wang Xian as she tugged the arm of the girl and dragged her out. Mom, he's obviously lying. Amnesia? He doesn't look like he has lost his memory to me. He's not lying. He really has no idea of where this place is. Don't tell me he fell from the sky. He can't be from the outside world. No outsider can come in. He probably lost his memory. I think he's a bad guy, probably got chased by some people, and ran into our place for hiding. Wang Xian chuckled bitterly as he overheard the scarcely audible conversation from the outside. It seems like this is the world within the array, Yongchang. They knew about the outside world, so we're still on Earth. That's close. If I'm not wrong, that lady should be a budding realm expert, while the girl is an inborn expert. De Hong Immortal Sect. Wang Xian murmured with radiance flickering in his eyes. Bam! Take your medicine. 2 days later, a teacup was slammed onto the table in front of Wang Xian while the girl instructed him with impatience. Thank you. Wang Xian smiled at the girl as he put down his book and spoke impassively. Since you're not disabled, do you expect me to send you medicine all the time? Can't you take it yourself? The girl snorted at Wang Xian with displeasure on her face. Subsequently, she turned around impatiently and left. Looking at the teacup on the table, Wang Xian picked it up with a beaming face and drank it in one shot. Then he picked up his book once again. In the book was written 4 ancient words, Great Wei Yongchang. Wang Xian took 2 days before he finally got some understanding of this place. Yongchang world was suppressed by Yongchang Cauldron, and it was the legendary immortal realm. The world possessed immortal sects over here with legendary immortals, and Dharma. Wang Xian stood up and gazed far ahead. The place he was staying at was halfway up the mountain, surrounded by the sound of waterfalls. One could see experts flying in the air on their swords some distance away. That's right, they were flying on their swords. Over here, the inborn experts could fly on their swords, Dan realm experts could ride the clouds, budding realm experts could dive into outer space. There's a complete cultivation system over here, and the art of cultivation is way beyond what the underworld has. On top of that, there are experts in the immortal realm that have surpassed the budding realm over here. With glistening eyes, Wang Xian studied his surroundings. All along, Wang Xian had wanted to learn the attacking means, and master the reed cultivation art. Now, the chance was here. Coming here was a good opportunity for me. Wang Xian curved his lips slightly. Chapter 548, Genius? Demon? 2. Dripping water space. Dripping water earth. Dripping water stone. Raining swords. Stone splitting rain. Evening. The sun lay diagonally across the horizon. A beautiful rainbow hung over the surrounding waterfall. Halfway up Invincible, a girl stood on a piece of empty land while waving the long sword in her hand constantly. Another lady stood by the side and watched the girl practicing her swordsmanship silently. Liquid state and gaseous state. Incredible. This level of control and sword technique. A short distance away, Wang Xian sat behind a table. With a book in his hand, he was shocked to see the girl waving her sword. The swordsmanship of the girl had truly opened a new door for Wang Xian. In the underworld, he had not encountered such incredible swordsmanship. Water can exist in liquid, gaseous and solid states. Solid states include ice, snow, frost and hail. Liquid states would include clouds, rain, mist and dew, while the gaseous state would include water vapor. In different forms and states, they will have different effects, attacks and damage. Yu Linger's incorporated sword into rain and sword into the mist. Each transformation has different effects. For example, the penetrative force of rain and the illusory effects of mist. Looking at Yu Linger, Wang Xian had lots of thoughts. In his hand, a ball of liquid appeared. Under his control, the liquid separated into droplets of water. Following which, it vaporized, condensed into water, turned into snow, turned into frost, turned into ice and eventually hail. All these were transformations of ice. In the past, I have rarely used water attribute because the offensive potency is a little weak. It might be better as a supporting attribute. However, it would seem that this was only because I do not know how to use them. Wang Xian sank into deep thought. After the ball of liquid transformed, how could he maximize the offensive potency? Spiritual water lance. At this moment, Wang Xian saw Yu Linger lunging ahead with the long sword in her hand. A stream of water flowed rapidly in her hands. Before the longsword contacted her target, the water flow on it attacked the target over a dozen times. When the longsword arrived, it easily penetrated the mountain rocks. I can't understand by watching alone. It would be best if I could join the Dahong Immortal sect. In this way, I could obtain more battle techniques and more application techniques. Incredible swordsmanship. You are really great. After seeing Yu Linger practicing for a while, Wang Xian walked over while piling compliments on her. TSK. What do you know about this? Seeing Wang Xian walking over with pleasantries, Yu Linger lifted her head proudly and remarked. Although I can't really understand, I can tell that Miss Yuer is really great with swords. Wang Xian smiled and didn't take offense. He turned to the lady and asked, "Aunt Yu, can you teach me this swordsmanship too? Can I join the Dahong Immortal sect?" Ha! The lady frowned upon hearing Wang Xian. Over the last 2 days, she was also pondering over how was she going to handle this unfamiliar young man. After 2 days of observation, she noticed that this young man didn't know about a lot of things. He had likely lost part of his memory. It isn't that easy to join the Dahong Immortal sect. You need to have the talents and strength. Before your strength reached the inborn realm, you would have to start with being an ordinary disciple. Why don't you go for the assessment of ordinary disciples? They are located at the entrance of Dahong Immortal sect. After you pass the assessment to become an ordinary disciple, the sect will allocate you accommodation. Yu Linger interrupted upon hearing Wang Xian. Clearly, she wanted Wang Xian to leave this place as soon as possible. Just as Yuer has said, you need to start with being an ordinary disciple to join the Dahong Immortal sect. After you reach the inborn realm, you will then be considered as truly part of the sect. You can choose a mountain sect of your choice. Each mountain sect will have a mentor. If you wish to join the Dahong Immortal sect, you can consider taking part in the assessment. The lady looked at Wang Xian as she explained. Inborn realm? Wang Xian nodded his head slightly. Yeah, inborn realm. I started cultivating when I was 8 and used 10 years to reach the inborn realm. If you work hard now, you should be able to reach the inborn realm by the time you are 40 years old. Yu Linger smirked and commented with a little contempt. The lady by her side patted her head. It's fate that brought us together. After you recover from your injuries, I can look for a job in Dahong Immortal's sect for you. If you reach the inborn realm one day, you can join Mdifeng. The lady smiled and spoke to Wang Xian. We'll probably have to wait 10 years then, the girl by the side mumbled softly. Wang Xian smiled in response. He moved his arm and a water sword appeared in his hand instantly. He threw it out and the water sword landed accurately on the wall Yu Linger was practicing with previously. You don't have to wait 10 years. I've realized I still have some strength. Yu Linger was stunned and so was the lady. They would have never have expected Wang Xian to be an inborn expert. When he was injured, the lady had examined Wang Xian's body. However, she didn't sense any water energy. You are a cultivator? And a water attribute cultivator? Yu Linger couldn't help but exclaim. Her eyes widened and were filled with disbelief. Yep. Wang Xian opened up his palm and water energy coalesced into a water sword. As he waved the sword, dense water energy scattered to the surroundings. Inborn realm. Considering you can coalesce water energy into a water sword so easily, you are at least at the inborn level. The lady was pleasantly surprised. Yu Linger was surprised too but snorted coldly. TSK. So what if he's at the inborn level? I am too. And you, can I join the Dahong Immortal sect? Wang Xian took a glance at the girl and revealed a faint smile. Yeah, of course you can. The lady nodded her head. Still feeling a little surprised, she said, I'll bring you to the sect to register tomorrow. Bring a copy of Dahong Immortal sect swordsmanship to your future junior brother. Alright. Yu Linger pouted as she answered. The lady was smiling radiantly as she added, I had not expected you to be a water attribute inborn expert. You can just address me as Mentor Yu in the future. Yes, Mentor Yu. Wang Xian nodded his head and turned his gaze to Yu Linger. Call me senior sister in the future. Here's the swordsmanship chapter. Seeing Wang Xian looking at her, Yu Linger pouted and handed a secret manual to him. Thank you. Wang Xian smiled and took the secret manual. After which, he walked to the table by the side and started reading. The lady smiled while watching. She was rather appreciative of Wang Xian's indifferent personality. Water could encompass all things. The cultivation path of water and the cultivation path of water swordsmanship required a calm and composed personality. Otherwise, one would find it hard to achieve great mastery. She knew her daughter had a bad temper. Who would have expected it would be so easy to join Dahong Immortal sect and obtain their cultivation arts? My incredible life in Yongchang world is about to begin. Looking through the secret manual in his hands, Wang Xian revealed a faint smile. With his current budding realm strength and his control over the water attribute as a 5 elements divine dragon, practicing any battle techniques would be a walk in the park. Chapter 549, Genius? Demon? 3. Water Morphology Analysis. Water Transformation. Swordsmanship, the technique of the world. Dahong Immortal Sect Swordsmanship Secret Manual summarized the forms, transformations of the water, and the swordsmanship. Just like Wang Xian had guessed, there were 3 states, which included solid, liquid, and gaseous states. But in addition to these 3 states, there was another state, boiling state. Water could turn into ice, but it could also raise its temperature. There was another method for refining equipment and elixirs known as the water refining technique. Apart from the flame, water was the only attribute that could refine elixirs and equipment. Things would develop in the opposite direction when they become extreme. The swordsmanship in the underworld is known as art or stroke. But the swordsmanship of Dahong Immortal sect is known as technique or method, battle techniques. Techniques and strokes are different. In the novels, the art of drawing the swords is simply impressive. With a sword radiance, the enemy dies instantly. However, it is clearly a childish move before techniques. Just like drawing the sword, you need to stay close to your enemies and strike them by surprise. But the sword techniques could directly kill you, even at a distance of 1,000 meters or farther away from you. Think about it. No matter how impressive you draw your swords, it's not as great as killing enemies at a few hundred meters away. This was already beyond the average underworld's combat but was elevated to the battling of techniques. Dahong Immortal Sect's sword technique is divided into 4 realms, which are namely Small Mastery, Great Mastery, Pinnacle, and Attainment. The inborn disciples who can achieve Great Mastery are top-notch talents. Dan Realm experts who achieve Pinnacle are considered to be impressive. Budding Realm experts can advance to Attainment. These budding Realm experts could be ranked at the top. Sword techniques have myriad variations, and attack means which one cannot imagine. Small Mastery sword techniques will need to master the gaseous state, Great Mastery will master the liquid state, and Pinnacle will be solid state. Attainment will master the boiling state. When the 4 states of water combine into one, there's a chance of reaching sword intent and advancing to become an immortal. Wang Xian read the introduction in the secret manual with eyes full of excitement. Night came without a sound. The moon and the stars over here were no different from the outside. The room that Wang Xian was staying in was not an isolated room, the hall was just beside it, while Yu Linger stayed upstairs. Wang Xian walked out of his room. His body had not fully recovered from previous injuries. As such, he could at most explode Dan Realm's strength in any battles. He took the secret manual to the yard and spotted a long sword on the table. He swung his arm. Clang! The sword is not bad, but it's not an inborn spiritual weapon. Wang Xian drew the sword, and phantom images appeared in front of him when he swung his arm. The use of the water states was mainly to confuse the opponent such that countless moves could be played in one strike. Illusory sword represented a small mastery of sword techniques. Illusory sword could cause damage, but it was much weaker as compared to a real long sword. In addition, the use of water vapor could control the long sword. That is, to the point of flying on it. However, this would require a strong control of it. Wang Xian waved his arm and suspended the sword in the air. With a swing, the sword lunged forward. Flying on the sword involved a lot of aspects of controlling the water vapor, such as speed, strength, angle. All of these required long-term practice. Wang Xian moved and stepped on the sword. Using mind control, the sword traveled ahead. The speed was not fast. The best method to increase the speed would be at its liquid form, using water clouds to hover with the sword in the air. Illusory sword. Wang Xian leaped off the sword and made a thrust with the sword in his hands. Instantly, countless illusory sword images appeared around him. Sword rain. Wang Xian coalesced the dense illusory swords into razor-edge water blades that were suspended in the surroundings as though it was million swords into one. 100 Tears blade. Wang Xian held and thrust the sword forward once again. The surrounding water swords streamed into the longsword and charged ahead. Before the longsword in Wang Xian's hand reached the target, the water swords had attacked it hundreds of times. This was known as Tears blade, which was divided into 10 tiers, 100 tiers, 1,000 tiers, and 10,000 tiers. Inborn experts who could reach 10,000 tiers were considered to be domineering. With water mist, I can even alter the course of the water swords and control their direction. This was the true blue skill and warfare. Wang Xian regarded the Dahong Immortal Sect sword techniques manual as a precious treasure since it contained a variety of powerful moves and a myriad of battle techniques. Towards the end of his cultivation, Wang Xian even needed to analyze and practice continuously in order to master it. Tweet tweet tweet. When the sound of birds chirping was heard, Wang Xian looked up and realized the sun had risen. The woods, waterfall, beautiful mountains and rivers and the birds that were flying high in the sky made the entire world seem like a fairyland. You're up early. Yu Linger was surprised to see Wang Xian holding a sword, standing in the yard. An hour in the morning is worth 2 in the evening. Wang Xian answered her impassively. He had no good feelings about the lass who had been going against him. But he was grateful to her mother. Yu Linger raised her eyebrows. Let's go. I'll take you to the place where we practice in the morning. Great. Wang Xian nodded and returned the sword to its original place at the side. Take the sword with you. You'll need to practice later with it. Yu Linger gave orders to Wang Xian like a bossy sister. Wang Xian smiled as he took the sword in his hands. Can you fly on the sword? Jump down if you can't. Yu Linger lifted her chin slightly as she took a sword. She threw it into the air as though she was flaunting her skills. With a leap, she hopped onto it and hovered down. But her speed was too slow. Lass! With a single hand, Wang Xian made the sword suspend beside his leg. Wang Xian instantly came up behind her with the propelling of the water energy. His speed was much faster than before. Have you learned how to fly a sword before? Yu Linger was so surprised that she parted her lips as she looked at Wang Xian. Is it difficult? I mastered it as soon as I learned it, said Wang Xian to Yu Linger plainly. You? Of course not. I learned it in a day. Yu Linger was blushing slightly as she gritted her teeth. Oh, 10 minutes was all that it took me. Wang Xian nodded. What a braggart. How dare a lad boast in front of me? Yu Linger stared at Wang Xian before she headed down to a waterfall below. At that waterfall, over 20 disciples were standing below, practicing with their swords without stopping. Upon seeing Yu Linger, some of the young men stopped. Linger! Hey, who is this? Those people gazed at Wang Xian with doubts. This is that guy who fell from the waterfall the other day. He'll be practicing with us from now on. Yu Linger pursed her lips as she spoke to the crowd. Oh, really? Upon noticing Yu Linger's expression, that group of young men quirked their lips as they scrutinized Wang Xian from head to toe. Chapter 550, Too Weak. Hey, junior brother. Since you have joined our embark, tell us your name. The young man with a sky-blue longsword looked at Wang Xian, lifted his head slightly and spoke. Wang Xian. Wang Xian looked across the 20-odd young men and girls. He was a little impressed. All of them were inborn experts. A 20-year-old inborn expert would have caused a huge ruckus in the underworld. Yet, all of them here were inborn experts. If elite disciples are inborn experts, wouldn't the core disciples be Dan Realm experts? Wouldn't elders and attendants be budding realm and the sect leader be immortal realm? This force is too insane. Wang Xian had decided that he definitely had to enhance the strength of Dragon's sect and Dragon Palace once he got out of this place. Otherwise, the Dragon's sect would be nothing when the immortal sects of Yongchang world were to descend upon the real world. Wang Xian. When the group of youths heard Wang Xian's simple introduction, they raised an eyebrow. How rude! Yu Linger pouted, picked up her sword and was on her way to practice her swordsmanship. Since junior brother has joined our embark, I will have to guide you well in the future as your senior. Come, let your senior brothers and sisters see what you are capable of. A young man with hair that reached his waist raised an eyebrow. He lifted the longsword in his hand and gestured to Wang Xian with a smile. Wang Xian looked at the young man in a traditional outfit, shook his head and said, "It's all right." An inborn level existence couldn't pique his interest at all. Oh? Senior brother Huayu wants to get a sense of your strength. Don't you know what to do? You are new here and yet you dare to be so proud? Beside them, two young men chided Wang Xian coldly upon hearing Wang Xian rejecting the guidance of senior brother Huayu. Junior brother, you are being a little rude here. Draw your sword. Huayu was a little surprised to be rejected by Wang Xian. The next moment, he waved the long sword in his hand as the glow of the sword swished past Wang Xian. The surrounding disciples simply watched with smiles. They held their swords in their embrace, smirked and watched with enthusiasm. Senior brother Huayu was the strongest among them. Whenever there was a new disciple, he would want to get a sense of his strength. The so-called sense was, in fact, showing the new disciple who was in charge here. In the entire Mdfengyu, everyone was convinced of senior brother Huayu other than Yu Linger. Moreover, senior brother Huayu had been wooing Yu Linger. Seeing how Yu Linger was displeased with Wang Xian a while ago, he naturally wouldn't let this opportunity slip by. When the crowd saw how nonchalant Wang Xian was acting, they were a little unhappy too. All right. Wang Xian nodded his head. He would have crippled a person like him, who courted his death, in the underworld. Take this sword technique. Wang Xian smiled faintly and swung his long sword across. Instantly, dense illusory swords formed all around him. Ha! You aren't too bad. Huayu focused his attention a little, moved his arms and gathered 10 water swords, which began circling around him. Slash! Wang Xian shouted plainly. Mist started forming around him as the illusory long swords shot towards the young man. Illusory swords? Hee hee. The young man's eyes were filled with contempt. He squinted and shouted, 10 Tears Blade. Illusory swords against 10 Tears Blade. This kid is a far cry from senior brother Huayu. I wonder how many strikes from senior brother Huayu he could withstand. When the surrounding disciples saw Wang Xian attack, they chuckled with contempt. Illusory swords was a sword technique that disciples below the inborn realm could practice. At their level, they had started learning Tears Sword and Water Sword. Bam! Ha! Sounds of metal clashing reverberated. Everyone could see Wang Xian's long sword being deflected away. However, the long swords that were deflected continued their attack by making a beautiful arc the next instant. The thousands of illusory swords around him were all heading towards senior brother Huayu. What? He's there. At this moment, a young man pointed to the back with a horrified expression. Everyone was taken aback and turned around. To their astonishment, they found Wang Xian standing more than 10 meters away. As for the illusory swords, they were being controlled to attack from a distance. Who would have expected our junior brother to be this good with the battle techniques of illusory swords? Huayu completed his 10 Tears Blade after knocking the long swords away time after time. In the end, the other swords came to attack him instantly. At this moment, his expression turned solemn. Before him, there were over 1,000 long swords hidden within the thin mist. He realized that the attack of every illusory sword was extremely forceful. Moreover, as they were illusory swords, they couldn't be crushed other than by deploying water energy to erase them. Great! Great! You are actually able to push me to this point. Huayu was looking a little embarrassed. He flexed his muscles and shouted, Descent of the Sword of Boundless. Swish swish swish. The next instant, 10 razor-sharp water swords were formed from water energy. Go! He shouted loudly and the long swords flew towards the core of Wang Xian's attack. If you don't wish to get injured, you better admit your defeat now, he reminded in a cold and arrogant tone. Yet, the crowd was completely stunned at this moment. They stared blankly at senior brother Huayu before turning to Wang Xian, who was more than 10 meters away. They couldn't help but gasp. Even Yu Linger was dumbfounded and in disbelief. Senior brother Huayu had been fighting with his illusion that used a metal longsword all along. As for Wang Xian, he was controlling the water energy from 10 meters away. This was totally toying with him. Complete domination. Senior brother Huayu still wasn't aware that his real opponent was watching him from 10 meters away when he was making those bold statements. Since you aren't admitting defeat, don't curse me for not showing mercy. Huayu shouted. He waved the long sword in his hand as he crushed illusory sword after illusory sword. Towards the middle of the sea of illusory swords, the razor-sharp water sword instantly erased the illusory swords. Too weak. After his attack, a voice filled with contempt resounded. What? When Huayu sensed that there wasn't anyone in the center of the sea of illusory swords, he had a bad premonition. When the dense mist dissipated, 6 razor-sharp water swords hovered around him and had him completely stunned. Wang Xian shook his head nonchalantly, waved his arms and the long swords before Huayu returned to him. This. None of the disciples of Invincible knew how to describe this battle. The strongest among them all, senior brother Huayu, had been shouting and screaming before. Yet, he was made a clown by Wang Xian. Countless illusory swords and a metal sword were enough to toy with senior brother Huayu. This junior brother of theirs was really strong. It was especially so in the control of illusory swords. De Hong's sword technique focuses on the technique and not the sword. Illusory swords focus on the illusions and not the sword. Wang Xian gained a little understanding as he revealed a smile. The reason why De Hong Immortal's sect wasn't a sect of sword cultivators was because their cultivation wasn't in the sword, but the techniques and tactics behind the sword. Chapter 551, The Outside World is Weak. Back at the training field of De Hong Immortal's sect in Invincible of Yongchang, more than a score of young men and ladies were gazing at Wang Xian in astonishment. Huayu was stupefied as he stared at Wang Xian with disbelief. He did not expect that a newbie who had just joined could trounce him. As someone who was prideful, he found this hard to swallow. Since there is an illusory sword, could I make my own phantom images too? Wang Xian was not even paying attention to the surrounding group of youngsters. He was holding the sword and pondering to himself. Gazing at the stream of water and the reflection in it, he revealed a faint smile on his face. Pop! At this time, a water clone that looked exactly like Wang Xian appeared beside him. However, the clone was transparent. Wang Xian grasped his sword, yet again. Water vapor began to condense around him, encompassing the clone and him altogether. In the blurry mist, it was hard to differentiate between the two of them. However, there was a flaw in this method. Any experts would be able to sense and differentiate easily since the principle would be stronger than the water clone. Connect us together. Wang Xian thought about how the 5 elements interact with each other. With his mind control, he tried to connect the energy from the water clone with him through the thick water vapor. Subsequently, the clone was able to explode daunting power that could camouflage him. Not bad. Wang Xian grinned as he tried to control his water clone to launch an attack. This was not that difficult either. Next, he tried to create a mechanical water clone which duplicated all his actions. Senior Linger, he's compelling and aloof. A female disciple came to Yu Linger, fixing her disbelieving gaze on Wang Xian. Yu Linger did not expect Wang Xian to be such a compelling figure who could triumph over Huayu with ease. His strength was already much stronger than hers. Yu Linger, who had been unhappy with Wang Xian, parted her lips with a complicated look in her eyes. Seeing Wang Xian practicing by himself, ignoring all of them, she pouted again and answered in frustration, "Aloof, my foot. Let's do our training." After senior brother Huayu walked away, and Wang Xian did not seem to be concerned about them, the disciples hesitated before continuing with their training. However, they would peer at Wang Xian occasionally during their practices. "Have your breakfast. After your breakfast, my mum will bring you to the registration at the ancestral sect," said Yu Linger coldly to Wang Xian after an hour. "Great." Wang Xian nodded his head gently while his mind was all focused on the use of water energy. After he went back to his residence, a disciple who had yet to reach Inborn sent breakfast to him. The ingredient used is rather fresh, with some energies contained in it. This place is indeed different from the outside. The spiritual energy was 4, or even 8 times more than what the outside world had. All the food over here contained spiritual energy too. To advance to Inborn realm in one's 20s was totally possible. Mentor Yu. After breakfast, Wang Xian came to Mentor Yu's room and called out for her. "Let's go. I'll take you to the registration." Mentor Yu walked out in the air as she nodded to Wang Xian. She brought him to the entrance of De Hong Immortal's sect. Along the way, there were pavilions, bridges, and waterfalls, adding on to the beauty of the fairyland. Wang Xian, Inborn disciples are considered to be adequate in De Hong Immortal's sect. But there are thousands of them in Dahong Immortal's sect. When you advance to Dan Realm, only then will you get to enjoy some prestige. Work hard in your cultivation, and strive to advance to Dan Realm. The lady spoke to Wang Xian as she strolled. Wang Xian nodded. I'll work hard, mentor you. After some hesitation, Wang Xian continued. Mentor you, what kind of qualifications do I need to have in order to get the best cultivation technique of Dahong Immortal sect? The best cultivation technique? Mentor you was slightly stunned. Soon after, she chuckled and said, it seems like there are things you do not understand. There are only 3 sects in Yongchang world. There's no stringent requirements to obtain the cultivation technique of the various sections. As long as you have the resources, you can even obtain the cultivation technique of Yongchang Immortal sect. Resources are all you need to exchange for the most formidable tactics and battle techniques of Dahong Immortal sect. Wang Xian froze for a moment. I can exchange the techniques directly with resources? That's way too easy. But soon, Wang Xian understood the reason behind it. Yongchang world was too small to have 3 major immortal sects. Having 3 sects in such a small world would, in fact, be overcrowded. Thus, each sect had relatively fewer people. Since the 3 immortal sects could stay together in a world, that must have been due to them being on good terms with one another. With a smaller population and smaller land, they did not value a cultivation technique of their own. It was to the extent that the offspring of Dahong Immortal sect's disciples could switch to Yongchang Immortal sect. This world was a rather peaceful place. Following Mentor Yu, he soon arrived at the foot of a vast mountain. Peak Wuxia is the registration location for all disciples. There are other mountains like Scripture's Depository, Sword Cleansing Peak, and Assessment Peak. You'll find out when the time comes. There's a big city just outside of that mountain entrance. All the daily supplies can be bought with spiritual stones over there. You can earn spiritual stones through work or exchange for them with resources. Mentor Yu explained to him. Wang Xian nodded slightly, as this was similar to how the real world worked. Oh? Mentor Yu, you're here. The timing is just right. I don't have to notify you on a separate note. A middle-aged man spotted the lady and spoke to her with smiles upon entering Peak Wuxia. I brought a disciple here to join Yu. What's up, Attendant Lu? Asked Mentor Yu to a middle-aged man with a flat voice. Big news. Here. Attendant Lu swept a glance at Wang Xian before he tossed a jade stone to the lady. Her memento stone. The lady froze for a moment before instilling her energy in it, and a screen suddenly popped up before Wang Xian. He was super shocked to see the screen in front of him. On the screen was an iPad. Yes, it's a tablet. Some real-life scenes were playing on the tablet. This is the situation of the outside world for the disciples to prepare themselves for the future, Attendant Lu said slowly. We have not come into contact with the outside world for 300 years. Never did I expect it to undergo such a drastic change. This is amazing. Mentor Yu exclaimed in surprise as she checked out the pictures on the screen. Hee, they called this technology. But the underworld outside is said to be very weak. I heard that Dan Realm experts can proclaim dominance in the underworld. The entire underworld only has a few hundred inborn experts. The outside world is just too weak, said the middle-aged man, chuckling. Is that so? The spiritual energy is too sparse outside as compared to our place. Mentor Yu shook her head slowly. Their resources are simply too little. We have been consuming our resources over here for more than 1,000 years. They're almost depleted too. I wonder when the spiritual energy in Yongchang Cauldron will be exhausted, and when our spirit array will disappear. Chapter 552, My Name Will Start to Spread, 1. Wang Xian stood by the side, listened to their conversation, and was completely shocked. He stared blankly at the image on the memento stone. I had not expected someone to have entered reality and gotten their hands on this information. It would seem like this world will surface in reality soon. Wang Xian's eyes flickered and he felt a sense of urgency suddenly. If a world like this were to surface, inborn experts would be everywhere. People in the Dan realm wouldn't be considered experts and one would have to be a budding realm expert to rule over a small area. In fact, even immortal realm experts might be present. At that time, what would Dragon Sect be before them? They probably would be crushed and overwhelmed completely. For him, even if he had turned into a divine dragon, he wouldn't win against these immortals who knew powerful skills and battle techniques. I've got to increase my level soon. Otherwise. For the first time, Wang Xian felt a sense of urgency. He had to reach level 9 so he could remain fearless when facing immortal realm experts. Qian Mei, you are here too. What a coincidence. At this moment, the voice of a middle-aged woman came from the side. TSK. Mentor Yu snorted at the middle-aged lady and wasn't hiding her annoyance with her. Hee hee. Ha. You have a new disciple. There's a new disciple who is willing to join Yu. The beautiful middle-aged lady looked at Wang Xian with a smile. Hey kid, Yu is among the bottom 3 of the 20 mountain sections. They don't even have a Dan realm disciple. Did you get scammed here? Leng Yan, shut your mouth. Upon hearing her words, Mentor Yu stared harshly at her. Did I say something wrong? I'm just letting an ignorant kid understand the picture and not be scammed by others. Hee hee hee. The beautiful middle-aged lady who was being addressed as Lin Yin chuckled and stared back at Mentor Yu with ridicule. The matters of my Yu have nothing to do with you. Mentor Yu clenched her fist tightly but released it shortly after while glowering at the middle-aged lady. TSK. Lin Yin lifted her head slightly and stared back at Mentor Yu in a confrontational pose. Attendant Lu shook his head bitterly and walked to the side. Clearly, he had no intention to interrupt. Master, if he's joining Yu, he can't be talented. One could easily tell that he's a rookie, said the girl beside Lin Yin with ridicule. The girl had thin lips and almond-shaped eyes with the ends inclining up. Overall, her appearance wasn't pleasing. That's a given. If he were a talent, he wouldn't be joining Yu. Lin Yin chuckled. Hey, little brother, do you want me to guide you a little? The girl turned around and asked Wang Xian with a face of contempt. Attendant Lu. Please register my disciple. Seeing and hearing the two of them criticizing and ridiculing Wang Xian, the sword in Mentor Yu's hand was shaking a little while she spoke to Attendant Lu. All right. What's your name? Attendant Lu responded immediately and asked loudly. Wang Xian. Wang Xian replied in an emotionless tone. He turned around and looked at the girl with almond-shaped eyes. Please guide me along. In the next instant, Wang Xian drew his sword and pointed it at the girl. What? Attendant Lu was about to register Wang Xian's name when he suddenly heard Wang Xian. He was taken aback and was shocked to witness what Wang Xian was doing. Mentor Yu, Leng Yin, and that girl were also taken by surprise. Yu had been one of the strongest 3 mountain sects in the past. Since Mentor Yu's husband, Hua Fengyu, died and their elite disciples were killed, their overall strength had declined and was ranked among the bottom 3 at this moment. Currently, all the disciples of Yu were the leftovers from the other major mountain sections. Over the last 2 years, no new disciples had joined Yu and the resources allocated to it had been declining over the years. Those who had joined Yu definitely wouldn't be disciples with ambitions or talent. Yet, this dim-looking guy that Mentor Yu had brought over wanted to challenge Lin Yin's disciple. Lin Yin's disciple would at least be of pinnacle inborn level. You must be courting death. Seeing that Wang Xian had the guts to challenge her, that girl wasn't furious at all. Instead, she looked at Wang Xian with contempt and ridicule. She swung her arm, drew her long sword and pointed directly at Wang Xian. Wang Xian, stop! Surprised by Wang Xian drawing his sword, Mentor Yu was astonished and wanted to stop him immediately. Since he had drawn his sword, there's no reason to retract it back. Qian Mei, could it be that you are trying to interfere with the sparring of disciples? Leng Yan stared at Mentor Yu and spoke with a radiant smile. Let's get started. Wang Xian had no intention of stopping at all. The long sword in his hands instantly released grayish water energy. Illusory swords appeared and completely covered his presence. Illusory swords? Hee hee. Let me teach you that you should keep a low profile. The girl with the almond-shaped eyes smirked and her sword glowed in dazzlingly blue light. I'll counter your illusory swords in a single strike, the girl shouted nonchalantly as she lunged ahead with her long sword. Wang Xian flexed his muscles and over 100 illusory swords shot towards that girl. At the same time, a water clone held his long sword and charged ahead. Break! The long sword in the girl's hand descended from above and clashed heavily with the illusory swords. Countless illusory swords were erased instantly as the long sword shot towards that human figure. Seeing that the human figure wasn't attempting to dodge, ruthlessness gleamed in the eyes of that girl. She didn't hold back her strength at all. Bam! Sounds of swords clashing resonated as the human figure was slashed apart by the descending sword. Shit! The next instant, the girl's expression sank. 3 razor-sharp water swords were shot towards her vital spots and it was too late for her to dodge. Presumptuous. When Leng Yan witnessed the development of the battle, her expression changed drastically. She waved her arm and a water shield appeared before the girl instantly. Bam! 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 The water swords fell on the shield. The girl's face was covered in cold sweat. Her eyes widened and were filled with disbelief as she stared at Wang Xian, who was standing 5 meters away. Wang Xian pulled back his arms and the sword returned to his hand. He turned to Mentor Yu and said, Mentor Yu, which mountain sect is she from? Mt. Lang. Mentor Yu was taken aback but she soon gave Wang Xian a smile as she replied. Trash. Wang Xian remarked plainly. This shocked Mentor Yu once again as her smile deepened. Attendant Lu, we will be leaving now. Don't forget to register him. Mentor Yu's lips curved up slightly as she spoke to Attendant Lu before walking out. Dang! Wang Xian put his long sword back in its scabbard and followed behind Mentor Yu, leaving the embarrassed Leng Yan and her disciple. And the dumbfounded Attendant Lu. Going forward, keep a low profile in the mountain sect. When you reach the Dan realm, you can then start showing your edge. You are still a little too weak currently. Practice diligently and I'll guide you if there's anything you don't understand. Walking out of Peak Wuxia, Mentor Yu paused for a moment and reminded Wang Xian of this. Wang Xian nodded his head silently but didn't take the reminder to heart. Now that information on the real world had surfaced, he was getting a little anxious. Initially, he was preparing to grow silently, away from attention while mastering some battle techniques and tactics. At this point, time wasn't on his side. He had to quickly master the battle techniques and tactics while gathering more resources. To get more resources, there was only a single way. That was to become the most glaring genius. My name will start to spread. Chapter 553, My name will start to spread, 2. Go ahead with your practice. I'll give you another sword. After they went back to Mdifengyu, Mentor Yu spoke to Wang Xian with a radiant look after taking a look at the long sword in his hand. Yes, Mentor Yu. Wang Xian nodded and suspended his sword in the air. He took the sword at his feet and rode to the waterfall. Let's hope he will bring some hope to Mdifengyu by advancing to Dan realm. Seeing Wang Xian's figure, Mentor Yu sighed with flickering radiance in her eyes. Shoo! The speed of Wang Xian riding on the sword was so fast that he was quickly at the waterfall. More than a score of Mdifengyu's disciples were training over there while Wang Xian flew into the air above them. Upon seeing Wang Xian riding his sword and overlooking them in the air, the group of disciples was slightly pissed off. His act was an obvious show of contempt for all of them. Hey, why are you doing up there? Get over here for your training. Yu Linger called out to Wang Xian, irked when she saw him. Wang Xian looked at Yu Linger and swept his gaze across all the people. With a faint smile, he said, You guys are just too weak, show me what you've got. You guys are just too weak, show me what you've got. What he said just struck more than 20 disciples with extreme self-contempt, and everyone froze. Even Yu Linger and Huayu, who'd been defeated in the morning, was caught by an unexpected surprise. Brat, what did you just say? Yu Linger pointed the sword in her hand at him as she spoke with anger. Nothing, I just want you guys to show me what you've got. Bam, 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 bam. As Wang Xian remarked, figures that looked exactly like Wang Xian suddenly popped out from behind the waterfall. In a brief moment, more than 20 water clones emerged. Show me what you've got. Without giving them any time to hesitate, he struck at the group of people below. Fuck, who the hell do you think you are? Damn you, how dare you talk big and challenge all of us? What an arrogant guy. The disciples were infuriated upon seeing the disdainful look on Wang Xian, who was charging toward them. Yu Linger was livid as she said, "You're looking for a beating. Just show me your inborn level capability and try all your sword techniques on me." Wang Xian drew his lips slightly. Since he needed to become a genius over here, he had to convince all the disciples of him to Fengyu. Burst. Bam. In an instant, 2 water clones exploded into water vapor, enveloping the surroundings within a range of 1,000 meters. Everyone was shrouded in the water mist. However, it did not affect them at all. Humph, how dare you challenge all of us alone? You're really a brazen fellow. Today, let me teach you a lesson. Huayu scowled at Wang Xian furiously. His entire body was emitting azure blue radiance while a fogless space showed up around him. Huayu had not taken his eyes off from Wang Xian. Illusory sword. Wang Xian looked at all of them while the water mist convened into thousands of illusory swords. In creating this many illusory swords with inborn level strength, the damage of these swords was too sparsely spread. These illusory swords have no power. Ignore them, a disciple called out loudly. Take care of this brazen fellow, over a score of disciples exclaimed together. He's up there. Needless to say, everyone locked onto Wang Xian and lurched at him. With a smile, a water clone suddenly broke out an immense amount of energy 10 meters away. Over there. Since Wang Xian was surrounded by water vapor, they could only rely on energy to lock onto his location. More than a score of people thrust at that water clone instantly. Go! Wang Xian waved his sword in the air, and the illusory swords behind the group started to solidify and turn into razor-edge water swords. Oh no, how can his water control ability be so strong? Whoosh! Arg! Damn, that's a fake one. The real one is here. Oh no, this one is also fake. Arg! How can it be? Damn, he's toying us. This is impossible. How could he be so terrifying with his water control ability? Even half-step to Dan realm experts are not that sick. Panic and incredulous voices were heard everywhere. You guys are just too weak. Wang Xian said in a dull tone. With a glimpse, he converted the illusory swords into water swords, which landed behind Yu Linger and Huayu. Oh no, behind you. Bam, bam, bam. A splashing sound was heard when some of the last disciples fell in the water. Wang Xian swung his arm while the sword went back to his hand. All the illusory swords around him disappeared as he looked at the 20-odd disciples who were in the water. How is this possible? How can your sword technique be so powerful? Yu Linger stood in the water as she questioned Wang Xian loudly in disbelief. You're not an inborn. An inborn would not have such strong power over water. Controlling water clones is not something easy, and an inborn can't create these numbers of illusory swords. Huayu glowered at Wang Xian with red eyes as he questioned Wang Xian. What I just displayed was really inborn level strength. Wang Xian overlooked them. What he had shown just now was really inborn level strength. However, his energy was immense, and his water control ability was superb since he was a divine dragon. You guys are just weak. Still the same words. The group of people had heard him repeat the same line a few times. A mixed expression was plastered on Yu Linger as she had not expected this at all. The young man who scared her to death was such a formidable character. The rest of the 20-odd disciples trembled slightly as they realized they'd lost to a new junior who'd just joined them. Besides, the fact that he defeated 20-odd people alone amazed them, and at the same time, struck panic into them. "You, come over." Wang Xian pointed to Huayu. "What? Me." Seeing Wang Xian pointing at him, Huayu was stunned, with trepidation in his eyes. He was brought over in the morning, and now, Wang Xian had beaten them all single-handedly. Huayu was already unnerved at this moment. Seeing Wang Xian calling out for him, his consternation grew. "Come over," said Wang Xian flatly as he looked at Huayu. "What do you want?" "Mentor Yu is coming. When she comes, she won't spare you." Huayu looked at Wang Xian with the deepest fear as he staggered back involuntarily. "I didn't hurt you just now, and I won't do it now either. Come over." Seeing Huayu's behavior, Wang Xian shook his head with disdain. "You? Fine, I'll go." Huayu felt instant humiliation when he spotted the belittling look in his eyes. Gritting his teeth, he came forward to Wang Xian. "How do you gain access to more resources?" asked Wang Xian straight away. "What? More resources?" Huayu froze for a moment as this was an unexpected question from Wang Xian. "Yes." Wang Xian nodded. "There are two ways to gain more cultivation resources. We can either improve our ranking among the sects or get into the top 20 in the individual ranking." Huayu answered blankly. Is that so?" "Yes, there's no other way except these two." Huayu nodded quickly, as he did not dare to hide any truth. Now, he was terrified of this aloof junior brother. "How do I improve the ranking of the sect?" Wang Xian raised his eyebrow. "You can issue a challenge anytime, and each sect will send 5 disciples for the challenge. Once we win against them, we can upgrade the level of our mountain sect." Wang Xian nodded his head in silence. Then he murmured, "I wonder how much of a reward I'll get for thrashing the entire immortal sect." Chapter 554, My Name Will Start to Spread, 3. "What?" When Huayu heard Wang Xian mumbling, he looked at him in shock. "Thrashing through the entire immortal sect? Nothing." Wang Xian shook his head and added plainly, "Practice diligently." Huayu's face was flushed as he stepped aside, feeling embarrassed. The 20 disciples stared at Wang Xian with complicated feelings. Swish! "What's the matter?" At this point, a voice sounded suddenly. Mentor Yu appeared in the sky and was looking down at the disciples who had all fallen into the water. She was baffled. Nothing. Yu Linger shook her head immediately. There was no way she could tell her mother that Wang Xian had defeated all of them. That would be too embarrassing. Mentor Yu didn't pursue the question further. She looked to Wang Xian and said, "Wang Xian, here's a sword for you." A blue treasured sword was thrown towards Wang Xian. Wang Xian reached out his hand, caught the sword and was taken aback. Phantom Sword, Level 11. Level 11. It's a level 11 spiritual weapon. Wang Xian was astonished. Pulling the sword out of its scabbard, he realized that the blade was blue and almost transparent. Moreover, the edge was incomparably sharp. As he swung it, illusory swords were left behind. Great sword! Holding the phantom sword in his hands, Wang Xian's eyes beamed with excitement. "If there's anything you need, you can let me know." Mentor Yu added. "Mentor Yu, do you have battle techniques or tactics?" Wang Xian asked directly. "I'm not imparting battle techniques or tactics. The disciples of our mountain sect are allowed into the scripture depository for an hour each month. In 5 days, you will be able to enter the scripture depository to choose. I have an elixir pill here too." As she spoke, she threw a blue elixir pill to Wang Xian. Ripple Pill, Level 5. Extractable Dragon Energy, 110,983. Wang Xian didn't hesitate at all as he caught it. He bowed at Mentor Yu and said instantly, "Thank you, Mentor Yu. All right. Practice diligently. I hope you can lead Emtifeng Yu to a new level." Mentor Yu smiled and shook her head. She looked across the surrounding disciples before taking off on her sword to return to the mountain peak. "I'll definitely return this favor." Looking at the disappearing figure of Mentor Yu, Wang Xian thought to himself. He lifted the elixir pill and swallowed it instantly. Mentor Yu probably knew about Wang Xian's strength. Otherwise, she wouldn't give him a spiritual sword and an elixir pill. When the surrounding crowd saw the spiritual sword in Wang Xian's hands and the elixir pill he had just consumed, envy filled their eyes. Even Yu Linger was envious of him. "What's the ranking of our mountain sect currently?" Wang Xian diverted all the dragon energy he obtained to heal his injuries as he asked Huayu. 19th. There are a total of 20 mountain sects and we are currently ranked 19th. Huayu felt a little embarrassed as he answered. "Where's the 18th ranked mountain sect?" Wang Xian asked Huayu. "Ha!" Huayu was stunned for a moment but quickly replied, "They aren't very far from us." You are going to challenge them?" As he spoke, his eyes lit up. The surrounding crowd also looked at Wang Xian with surprise and shock. "Lead me there." Wang Xian replied directly. All right. Huayu's eyes beamed up. Considering Wang Xian's strength, he definitely could defeat the 18th ranked mountain sect. "Let's go. Follow me." Huayu turned to Wang Xian and stepped on his sword. "Let's go." Wang Xian nodded his head and took off on his sword. "Go. Let's go too. Follow them." The disciples of Emtifeng Yu were exhilarated. Wang Xian would be challenging the 18th ranked mountain sect. Even if Emtifeng Yu was to just advance by a single position, the resources they would be getting would still be substantial. Yu Linger hesitated for a moment but still took off on her sword and followed behind. Wang Xian, the 18th ranked mountain sect is Emtiqianshui. They have 25 disciples and the strongest disciple is Wang Beichuan. He's a little stronger than me. However, you are rather strong. Together with junior sister Linger, Zhao Qian, Lu Dong and me, we definitely will win against them. Huayu explained to Wang Xian with ecstasy. To challenge a mountain sect, each mountain sect would have to send 5 representatives. They could choose team battles or individual battles. The challenger would be the one to choose. These were the rules of De Hong Immortal sect. However, Wang Xian didn't pay any attention to the rules. He really had no regard for the strength of Huayu, Yu Linger and the rest at this moment. Emtifeng Yu was roughly 3 kilometers away from Emtiqianshui. However, the distance of 3 kilometers was only a matter of several minutes. "Wang Xian, let's fly in directly on our swords." Flying directly into a mountain sect on the sword symbolizes taunting and challenging. Huayu continued to explain the rules to Wang Xian. Wang Xian nodded his head and followed behind Huayu towards the training ground of Emtiqianshui. At this very moment, 20-odd disciples of Emtiqianshui were practicing. Some were resting by the side. There were also disciples who were flirting with each other. A petite girl sat on the huge rock by the side and was chatting joyously with a few other young men and girls. "Ha! Someone's coming. A challenge?" At this moment, the disciples who were practicing saw a group of people approaching while riding on their swords. They were astonished. "Challenge? Who dares to challenge us?" The disciples of Emtiqianshui squinted their eyes as they tried to catch a glimpse of Wang Xian and the group. "Emtifeng Yu is here for the challenge." Huayu shouted loudly and his voice reverberated across several kilometers. "Emtifeng Yu. They are from Emtifeng Yu. They actually dare to challenge us. We just gave them a tough beating last month and yet they dare to come to us today. They must be asking for a beating. TSK. Could it be Huayu has made great improvements in swordsmanship?" The disciples of Emtiqianshui stared harshly at the disciples of Emtifeng Yu who were approaching. Yo, who would have expected people to challenge your empty Tianxue? At the huge rock, a young man turned to the petite girl and commented with a smile. They are disciples from Invincible. They are most likely no match for us, the petite girl answered. Her eyes squeezed into a line when she smiled, making her look adorable. Hee hee. This is interesting. Sparring between rookies? Let me go take a look. What do you mean, senior brother Liang? What do you mean by sparring between rookies? The petite girl grumbled unhappily at that young man. Isn't the battle between the 18th and 19th ranked mountain sects a great example of rookies sparring? Haha, the young man laughed loudly. TSK. I'm not going to talk to you. You are the rookie. So what if your mountain sect is rank 12? The petite girl stared at the young man unhappily. Alright, it's my fault. Let's go take a look. The young man carried the girl up as he walked ahead, seemingly going for a show. Several young men around him also followed him ahead. Huayu, didn't I teach you a lesson last month? Why are you here again? On the training field of Tianxue, a young man lifted his head up slightly. He stared harshly at Huayu as he remarked. Hee hee. You guys are definitely going down today. A 5-on-5 group battle. Do you have the guts to accept? Huayu snorted coldly. Wang Xian's presence had emboldened him. Great. My hands are still feeling a little itchy and would love to have you as a punching bag. Chapter 555, My name will start to spread, 4. Not too bad to have you guys as punching bags. I can defeat all of you in 20 moves. Disciples from Tianxue walked out with overbearing confidence. Let's do it. I'll make sure all of you admit your defeat today. The youth in the center raised his hand as he drew his long sword. Great. Huayu cast a look at Yu Linger and the rest behind him. They had the absolute confidence in winning this 5-on-5 group battle. There was no hesitation for them. With Wang Xian around, they had 100% chance of winning. Your guidance is much appreciated, said Wang Xian with his sword in his hand as Yu Linger and the rest walked over and put up a ready stance. His sword was still in the scabbard when he spoke. However, his sword was drawn as soon as he finished. I've never seen this lad in Invincible before. Upon seeing Wang Xian ready to strike at them, the 5 young men from Tianxue furrowed their brows. The petite girl brought several youngsters over with a broad smile. The young man who had her in his arms even whispered to her that 2 chickens were pecking each other. Then, they looked up at them. You're so eager for a beating. Beichuan's senior brother, Thrash Invincible. Seeking your own doom. Beichuan's senior brother, teach them a lesson. The group of surrounding disciples from Tianxue cheered loudly. Digging your own graves. Coldness flashed across Wang Beichuan and his gang as they drew their swords. 4 water clones with swords in their hands popped out around Wang Xian as he jerked his body. Wang Xian was also wrapped in the water current. Illusory sword. The surroundings were instantly filled with mist after the sword left the scabbard. Insignificant trick. The disciples from Tianxue watched the strike from Wang Xian with contempt. Let's do it too. Immediately, Huayu called out to his members after he was stunned by Wang Xian, who took the lead. Where's the next location? Bam, bam, bam. However, all the water clones and illusory swords before them dissipated at this time. Along with which came 5 crashing sounds. No, how is this impossible? Wow, damn. He's powerful. Only shocking and painful moans were left in the air. Wang Xian was already standing at the spot where the 5 young men stood while they were lying on the floor. Next, Huayu stammered with a stupefied look. Next is Tianxue, ranked 17th. Huayu only managed to complete his sentence after a long time. Let's go. Wang Xian turned around as he spoke to Huayu. Wait, big brother. Hang on. Hua Yu looked like he was in a trance before he sprinted to a mountain in front of the training field of Empty Tianshui. On that mountain was a spiritual stone, which he gently pulled. Okay, our ranking is up. We're going to Empty Tianshui. Let's go. Sensing the impatience of Wang Xian, he hurriedly assured him, let's go, big brother. The disciples from Fengyu behind him were dumbfounded. They expected a win, but not an instant kill. They stared blankly at Wang Xian with a hint of horror in their eyes. The new disciple from Fengyu was not a simple character. Yu Linger felt even more complicated as she fixed her eyes on Wang Xian in a daze. Fengyu's disciples rode on their swords and left, and the entire process only took 2 minutes. All the disciples from Empty Tianshui were stunned, looking at the 5 senior brothers lying on the ground. Instant kill. He could knock out Beichuan's senior brother and the rest single-handedly. The strength of that young man was so damn strong. How did this happen? When did Fengyu recruit such a powerful disciple? This. All the disciples of Empty Tianshui revealed an incredulous look. They knew Fengyu like the back of their hands. But now, it turned out. How did this happen? The strength of that young man. Several youngsters beside that petite girl had shock plastered on their faces. This is interesting. Fengyu actually recruits a disciple who possesses remarkable strength. The young man who was holding the petite girl in his eyes had a brief stunned moment before he commented with flickering radiance in his eyes. He's quite strong. I'd guess he's at least a half-step to Dan realm, and somewhat skilled in his illusory swords and water clones. Another young man nodded in agreement. Given his strength, he should be able to lead Fengyu into the top 15. Almost there. The rest of the Fengyu disciples are just too lousy. Those disciples who came from the mountain sect that was ranked 12th began to comment. Interesting. Let's follow them and see how far that lad can lead Fengyu in terms of ranking. The young man smiled with his lips quirked. He stood on the sword and rode away. Let's follow them. It was a surprise for Fengyu to have an expert. I want to check out their results too. Wang Beichuan swept the water droplets off his body with embarrassment as he spoke with a sullen face. Let's go. The group of Empty Tianshui disciples hesitated before they hopped on their swords and headed to Empty Tianshui. Next. Just when the Empty Tianshui disciples arrived at Empty Tianshui, a clear and icy tone cut the air. Everyone froze. The young man who had the petite girl in his arm raised his eyebrow. Consuming his physical strength at such a rate is not wise. If he continues his incessant challenges, he can only stop at 15th. There are half-step to Dan realm experts within the top 15 sects. Some of them commented when they saw Fengyu disciples rushing over to another mountain sect. Let's keep up with them this time. The group of youngsters darted out while the Empty Tianshui disciples followed suit. Those Empty Tianshui disciples who had just been defeated also went over with curiosity. A total of 90 disciples from 2 mountain sects followed behind. When they arrived at the mountain sect ranked 16th, the disciples in that mountain sect were freaking out. It's just a challenge. Why did so many people come and make me jump? A wild and young man walked out, beckoning some of the surrounding disciples. 10 seconds later. Damn, he's awesome. Another kill in seconds. They're going to Mtuwuin. But Qin Shan from Mtuwuin is a half-step to Dan realm expert. It's impossible to achieve another kill within seconds. This disciple from Fengyu is really fierce. I bet he could beat Qin Shan. The disciples of Fengyu rode on their swords with over 100 followers behind them. All the followers were those who had been defeated by them. Damn, killing in seconds. It took him just one move to finish 5 strongest experts within the mountain sect. Now that they are challenging another mountain sect, they cannot miss it. All the people behind the disciples of Fengyu were discussing how far this new disciple could go. Seeing all the disciples from 16, 17, 18 placings following behind them, the disciples of Fengyu exhibited thrills on their faces. In the beginning, they had scorned this new disciple who just joined. But it soon developed from shock to respect, and eventually worship. Instant kill. The ranking of Mtfengyu leveled up a lot, and the resources in the ancestral sect almost doubled. Chapter 556, My name will start to spread, 5. Great, great. Now that Qin Hai has reached the half-step to Dan realm, our Mtwuyin can now compete with Mtjiuhua. At this moment, a middle-aged man within Mtwuyin faced the crowd of youths before him as he exclaimed. Master, rest assured. Give me 10 days. In 10 days, Brother Qin Shan and I will definitely challenge Mtjiuhua and raise our ranking to 14th. On the training field of Mtwuyin, a young man stood before 30 other disciples with his head lifted up proudly as he remarked confidently. Alright, Mtjiuhua has 2 half-step to Dan realm disciples currently. Therefore, all our remaining disciples have to practice diligently and aim to achieve the breakthrough by the end of the year, the middle-aged mentor said to his disciples with a smile. Yes, Master. All 30 disciples were brimming with ambition. We definitely should try to get into the top 10. Disciples of Mtfengyu are here to challenge. At this moment, a shout could be heard. Everyone in Mtwuyin was taken aback, including the middle-aged mentor. He turned his head around, looked to his left and was shocked by what he saw. Over 100 people were flying towards the training field of Mtwuyin on their swords. Mtfengyu. The 18th ranked Mtfengyu, the middle-aged mentor frowned slightly and was clearly feeling something was dubious. Where are you guys from? The middle-aged mentor looked across the crowd while shouting solemnly. Get down. Mentor Du of Mtwuyin is around. The disciples who were flying in the air landed on the ground immediately. Mentor Du, we are disciples from Mtfengyu. When Huayu landed on the ground, he lifted his head slightly and was brimming with confidence. Under normal circumstances, Mtfengyu disciple wouldn't be as flamboyant as Huayu was when he was facing the disciples from Mtwuyin. We are here to challenge Mtwuyin. Ha! Mentor Du raised an eyebrow. The 18th ranked Mtfengyu is challenging us, Mtwuyin. Are you guys crazy? Before Mentor Du could say a word, a disciple shouted at Huayu directly. Mentor Du didn't say a word as he looked suspiciously at the 100-odd disciples. Mtfengyu only had 20-odd disciples. Senior brothers, we have just challenged Mtshenshui, therefore. Please guide us along, said Huayu. Wang Xian stood by the side with his sword while staring at the disciples of Mtwuyin. This disciple of Mtfengyu is too strong. Relying on his personal strength alone, he has brought Mtfengyu from the 18th rank to challenging the 15th rank mountain sect. He's definitely at the half-step to Dan realm. Moreover, he could be considered to be among the elites of the half-step to Dan realm. His use of illusory swords and water clones is indeed terrifying. I wonder if Qin Shan would be a match for him. If Qin Shan loses, Mtfengyu's ranking will rise to 15. Behind them, the disciples of Mtshenshui, and Mtsansheng were discussing softly. Half-step to Dan realm. The disciples of Mtwuyin were slightly surprised. They finally understood a little and their attention landed on Wang Xian. No wonder Mtfengyu is acting so arrogant. So they have a half-step to Dan realm disciple. Qin Hai squinted his eyes slightly, stared at Wang Xian and gave an eerie smirk. Half-step to Dan realm. Mentor Du looked at Wang Xian and his lips curved up slightly. He didn't say a word. He crossed his arms and simply stood by the side while watching the developments with a smile. A half-step to Dan realm disciple was dreaming of defeating his Mtwuyin. What a far-fetched dream. Are you the only one representing Mtfengyu? Qin Hai lifted his head slightly, stared at Wang Xian and asked this plainly. Send out 5 disciples from Mtwuyin and stop wasting my time. Wang Xian looked across the disciples of Mtwuyin and commented without emotions. Stop wasting your time. How arrogant. Today, no one else from Mtwuyin has to make a move. I can finish you off by myself. A flash of ruthlessness gleamed in Qin Hai's eyes. He waved his long sword and ripples formed in the air. That's Qin Hai from MT Wuyin, and in MT Wuyin, he's only weaker than Qin Shan. What does he mean? He knows clearly that this disciple from Nifengyu is at the half-step to Dan realm and yet he's going to challenge him alone. Could it be? Could it be? Qin Hai has completed the breakthrough? Seeing Qin Hai charging ahead alone, the surrounding disciples were astonished. Haha, how dare you challenge us, MT Wuyin, with just a single half-step to Dan realm disciple. You guys are really courting your own demise. Initially, I was still thinking of only revealing my strength when we challenge MT Jiuhua. For today, you can be my testing stone. Qin Hai laughed confidently, shocking the surrounding disciples of MT Tianshui and MT Shanshui. Qin Hai has made the breakthrough to half-step to Dan realm. MT Wuyin has 2 half-step to Dan realm disciples now. It's over. The disciples of MT Fengyu will be beaten to their knees on MT Wuyin. When the surrounding disciples heard Qin Hai, they were astonished. As for the crowd from MT Wuyin, they looked at the surrounding crowd with contempt and ridicule. Before this group of disciples, there was still a young man standing by the side with his hands crossed while watching with a confident smile. Who would have thought that MT Wuyin would have 2 half-step to Dan realm disciples now? It would seem that Nifengyu's progress will end here. That's about the same as I expected. The young man carrying the petite girl chuckled and commented. That's not a given yet. The disciple from Nifengyu knocked out the disciples of MT Sanfeng instantly. Perhaps he could still win this, the petite girl retorted the young man. Xiao Yaya, you don't understand. A half-step to Dan realm expert could easily win against 7 to 8 inborn experts. Therefore, the instant knockout was still as expected. However, for those at the same level, the young man spoke in an educating tone. Suddenly, his eyes widened. 1 down, 4 to go. Wang Xian's emotionless voice stunned the surrounding crowd. Their jaws dropped and their eyes were filled with disbelief. Wang Xian didn't stop moving as he charged towards the group of disciples from MT Wuyin. His eyes were fixed on Qin Shan who still had his arms crossed. His strength. Fight! Qin Shan's eyelids twitched violently as he shouted bitterly and drew his long sword. The other 3 disciples behind him drew their swords too immediately and charged towards Wang Xian. Bam! However, the group saw Qin Hai knocked to the ground heavily at this moment. Qin Hai, instantly knocked out. A half-step to Dan realm disciple couldn't put up the slightest of resistance at the moment against Wang Xian. The disciples of MT Tianshui, MT Shanshui and others stared in disbelief. Could it be he has reached the Dan realm? It cannot be. Shit! A Dan realm expert? Instantly knocking out a half-step to Dan realm expert. This insane level of strength. His attack hasn't reached the level of a Dan realm expert. He dominated completely with just swordsmanship. His control of water energy and general control are off the charts. On one end, Mentor Du's eyes widened in disbelief. He let down his crossed arms gradually, eyes still remaining on Wang Xian. How can he be so insanely strong before reaching the Dan realm? When the surrounding disciples heard Mentor Du, they couldn't help but be impressed and shocked. Chapter 557, My Name Will Start to Spread, 6. Next. 10 seconds later, 4 disciples of MT Wuyin fell on the ground while Wang Xian's voice was heard once again. Big brother, MT Jiuhua is the next one in the ranking. Follow me, big brother. The 2 lips of Hua Yu knocked together as he was elated when he spoke. Hua Yu was already used to pulling the spiritual stone, and now it was the one on the training cliff of MT Wuyin. Let's go. Let's go. Hua Yu hopped on his sword while Wang Xian followed behind. Both of them hovered in the direction of MT Jiuhua. Damn, he's fucking impressive to defeat 4 mountain sects alone. And he's not stopping. Does he want to do it in one shot? Given his strength, they could at least improve another 2 to 3 rankings. Too strong, he's simply too strong. Whoosh! Without the slightest hesitation, the disciples from those defeated mountain sects were already on their heels. I did not expect Mdifengyu to have such an outstanding disciple. Mentor Du gazed at Wang Xian in awe. He hesitated slightly before he stood on his sword and flew in the direction of Mt Jiuhua. Like all others, he wanted to see how far this disciple could go. Next. Mt Jiuhua, 14 in the rankings, defeated. Next. Mt Qing, 13 in the rankings, defeated. Next. Senior brother, we have come to your Mt Wuyu, said the petite girl to the young man beside her. She looked at the young man, who was hovering to Mt Wuyu in stupefaction. Ha ha. The young man chuckled, but his eyes were half-dazed. Mt Qing, who had 4 half-step to Dan realm experts, was easily defeated. Even though it did not take a second to fall, it did not take more than 10 seconds either. Mt Wuyu had 5 half-step to Dan realm experts, including him. After seeing the sickening combat power of that young man, the corner of his lips twitched involuntarily. Damn! Given his understanding of Mt Wuyu disciples, there was no way that they could be a match for this Mdifengyu disciple. Where did this devil thing come from? The young man gritted his teeth as he asked this with an awful look. How dare an insignificant Mdifengyu challenge us, Mt Wuyu? You guys are really seeking your own death. Let me deal with all of you alone. Just then, the young man heard a familiar and insolent voice. The eyelid of the young man twitched violently as he propelled his sword hurriedly. He bellowed, "Damn you, Lu Hezhen! Stop your brazen attitude. Who do you think you are? We're admitting our defeat." The young man who was pointing his sword at Wang Xian revealed a lost expression when he heard his senior big brother bawling at him. He was stunned as he looked over his shoulder. Brother Ming, they're from Mdifengyu. It's the trashy Mdifengyu. I can single the entire mountain sect out. The young man answered his senior big brother in stupefaction. The 4 outstanding fellows from Mt Qing were walked over easily. You? The senior big brother of Mt Wuyu glowered at him. What? How is this possible? I have been watching them all along. We're no match for him. Just throw in the towel, the senior big brother said with a gloomy look. He thought of the time when he had said Mdifengyu and Mt Tianshui were 2 chickens pecking at each other in the beginning. Now? An outright smack in the face. If Mdifengyu was some chicken, then they were just worms. Admitting defeat is the right choice. Mt Wuyu is clearly no match for this senior brother from Mdifengyu. That's right. Even though Mt Wuyu has 1 half-step to Dan realm expert more than Mt Qing, it is futile. He's too much for you to handle. Let's go. Next. The number of disciples commenting around had hit more than 200 people. Everyone was clamoring while various comments went into the ears of Mt Wuyu disciples. That young man of Mt Wuyu twitched the corner of his lips while the rest of the disciples lowered their heads in silence. Next, Mt Luan, ranked 11th. Mt Luan has 10 half-step to Dan realm experts. If they send their best 5, I wonder if they could go against this senior brother. He looks so young, and I have never heard of him before. How can he be so powerful? He's simply too strong, and look at his aloof and dashing profile. I want to marry senior brother. As they continued their journey, the number of people on their heels had reached nearly 300. The more sects they surpassed, the more disciples tagged along. It was already in the afternoon when Wang Xian was busy with his challenges. Many of the disciples were following behind with excitement as they skipped their lunch. After all, they were powerful martial artists who could go on empty stomachs for a few days without any issues. At this time, Mdifengyu's ranking had been rising at a frenzied rate. Word of a disciple slamming a bunch of mountain sect's disciples traveled fast. Scriptures Depository, Sword Cleansing Peak, Assessment Peak, Equipment Peak, Exlir Mountain were 5 mountains located just next to the main peak. Before the main peak was one huge cliff that measured 1,000 meters tall and 10 meters wide. There was a line on either side of the cliff. One was the mountain sect's leaderboard while the other one was the young disciples' one. 20 mountain sects were ranked according to their strength. That went the same for the individual disciples. The leaderboard would show the top 20 young disciples of the Dahong Immortals sect. In Dahong Immortals sect, where most of the martial artists had a longer lifespan, young men referred to those aged 45 and below. In other words, it was a leaderboard for disciples aged 45 and below. The ranking could change at any time. So long as the one who issued challenges defeated the opponents and pulled down the spiritual stone at their training field, the ranking would dip by one position. At the same time, the mountain sect who won would increase by one position. Yet, the leaderboard had undergone rapid and bizarre changes today. In the beginning, not many disciples paid attention to Mdifengyu when they advanced from 19th to 18th. Those mountain sects at the bottom of the rankings were usually considered as non-existences. Nobody really cared about what was happening. However, Mdifengyu gradually rose in their rankings. When they hit the 15th, they attracted the attention of many people. The 15th was a mark that represented a half-step to Dan Realm Expert's presence in the mountain sect. Yet, everyone was surprised to see Mdifengyu hitting the 12th position in less than an hour. The sect that was ranked at the 12th position had 5 half-step to Dan Realm Experts. Overtaking them would mean that Mdifengyu possessed the strength of defeating 5 half-step to Dan Realm Experts. Just when the crowd was discussing the speedy rise of Mdifengyu to the 12th position, their position was promoted again. It was already 4 p.m. Wang Xian stood at the training field of Mtilwan as he spun around slowly. Just as we expected. He won, an easy feat once again. Fast and furious. Within a short span of a few hours, he raised the ranking of Mdifengyu to 11th place. Is he going to continue? Is he? The 10th in ranking possesses a Dan Realm disciple. Have you noticed? Did you all notice? He hasn't been drawing his sword. Gosh! Everyone gasped and looked at Wang Xian in awe. He had battled through 8 mountain sects by himself within a few hours. He had promoted Mdifengyu's ranking from 19th to 11th place by force. Just him alone. Next! Wang Xian turned a deaf ear to all the discussions around him. He would have wanted to challenge the top 3 ancestral sects if the rules allowed him to skip levels. Next! Hua Yu's eyes were already full of admiration. He was thrilled when he said, "Next." No, big brother, it's getting late now. When we reach the next mountain sect, the disciples will have stopped their training. Is that so? Wang Xian looked at the sky and nodded. Fine, let's go back now. Yes, we'll head back. Hua Yu hurriedly said. Wang Xian made a move and rode off on his sword. Chapter 558, The Name of the Dragon King. Casual and carefree while taking off on his sword. All the disciples around stared blankly at the leaving figure. Not a single one wasn't impressed and surprised. Why haven't I seen this senior brother before? How did he just shoot up so suddenly? He is definitely peerless below the Dan realm. In fact, he might even be able to go toe-to-toe with a Dan realm expert. I'm certain that he has definitely reached the Dan realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't be that incredible. Disciples from various mountain sects discussed fervently as they saw Wang Xian leaving. Mentor Du said that his attacks haven't reached the Dan realm. It is just that his swordsmanship and ability to control water are too insane. Mdifengyu has really shot to fandom. He has carried the mountain sect on his shoulders alone and has contributed to the rise. The comments of the surrounding crowd slowly made their way to the ears of the 20-odd disciples from Mdifengyu. Their feelings were complicated. Some were agitated but most were exhilarated. Now that Mdifengyu had risen from 19th to the 11th, the resources allocated to them would increase 3 to 4-fold. Considering that Mdifengyu had few disciples, everyone would be able to get substantially more resources and they would also improve drastically. Yu Linger stared at that figure blankly, feeling exceptionally conflicted. Once, their Mdifengyu was also an incredibly strong mountain sect in Dahong Immortal sect. Her father was even the strongest existence on the ranking board of youths of various mountain sections. He was the #1 disciple of De Hong Immortal sect. The glory days had since departed from Mdifengyu for over 10 years. During these years, Mdifengyu had fallen to the bottom of the mountain sections. Her mother was supporting Mdifengyu desperately. She would have never expected the young man that fell from the waterfall, the one who gave her a scare and the one her mother took out precious elixir pills to save would be so incredibly strong. I have been against him. He probably doesn't have a good impression of me now. No. He hasn't been looking into my eyes from the very beginning. At the thought of this, Yu Linger felt bitter. Hey, brothers from Mdifengyu. What's the name of this senior brother? When did he join your Mdifengyu? At this moment, curious questions came from the surrounding disciples of various mountain sections. Several hundred disciples, with the majority of them being even stronger than them, were staring at them. Wang Xian. Our senior brother's name is Wang Xian. Wang Xian. Senior brother Wang Xian. The surrounding disciples mumbled to themselves as they etched this name into their minds. After this day, the name of Wang Xian would definitely be known throughout De Hong Immortal sect. He told us his name is Wang Xian and that others call him the Dragon King. Yu Linger mumbled to herself. What? Junior sister Linger, what did you just say? His name is Dragon King. A disciple from Mdifengyu standing by the side was shocked as he looked at Yu Linger with doubts. Yeah. Yu Linger nodded her head. Dragon King. Huh. This name is truly domineering. The Dragon King that creates clouds, casts rain and stirs waves on the surface of the seas. A really apt name, a disciple from Mdifengyu exclaimed loudly. Dragon King. What a domineering name. The surrounding crowd and disciples were taken aback but exclaimed with a smile soon after. That's a really domineering name. Dragon King. Dragon King. Wang Xian wasn't aware that what he said casually when he first regained consciousness was now starting to spread throughout De Hong Immortal sect. In De Hong Immortal sect, disciples would end their day of training after 5 p.m. All the disciples from various mountain sects could choose to head to the Martial Peak to spar with others. Alternatively, they could continue their practice. They could also head to the Sword Cleansing Peak to sharpen their weapons, to the Pill Hill to purchase elixir pills, or even to the Scripture Depository to read books. Whenever the evening arrived, the areas around the main peak would be exceptionally lively. Look! Mdifengyu's ranking has increased by 8 in a single day. How can this? How can Mdifengyu be ranked so highly? Last I recalled, weren't they the second from the bottom? Their entire mountain sect only has 20 disciples. It's because of a disciple from Mdifengyu. He is extremely strong and defeated 8 mountain sects alone. Today, disciples from 6 to 7 sects witnessed with their own eyes how he challenged one mountain sect after another. He's really strong. A disciple defeated 8 mountain sects in a single day? Could he have Dan realm level strength? I'm not certain. Others are calling him the Dragon King. What a domineering name. Dragon King. Who gave him the guts to call himself that? He's arrogant. He had the capital to do so. He defeated 8 mountain sects on his own, including crushing 5 half-step to Dan realm disciples easily. These half-step to Dan realm disciples are all really strong and tough. The surrounding disciples around the main peak stared at the leaderboard vigilantly while discussing in awe. The news of a single disciple from Mdifengyu defeating 8 mountain sects alone quickly spread among various disciples. Some were shocked while others were surprised. However, there were more who weren't convinced. I heard that the Dragon King of Mdifengyu wanted to challenge the 10th-ranked MT Jillian. However, it was getting late and thus he gave up on the idea. If he had not, I believe Mdifengyu would still be able to increase its ranking by several spots. Yeah! The Dragon King is really strong. He definitely has the strength to go against Dan realm disciples. Several disciples that had gone along to spectate in the afternoon looked at the leaderboard on the cliff as they exclaimed emotionally. He needs to at least be in the Dan realm for him to challenge the 10th-ranked mountain sect. An insignificant disciple calling himself the Dragon King. What a joke! How arrogant! There's not a single supreme talent in the bottom 10 mountain sections. There's nothing to be proud of after defeating a pile of scraps. At this moment, several disciples walked over, glanced at the leaderboard and spoke with indignance. Ha! Several youths looked at the other disciples, frowned and remarked, "That's because you guys haven't witnessed the strength of the Dragon King. If you guys had, you wouldn't be saying the same. Dragon King? Who the hell is he? If he dares to challenge us, our senior brother Su Fa will teach him a lesson so well that he will be humble. Calling himself the Dragon King? What a joke," several disciples remarked in contempt. They shook their heads and continued, "A disciple that rules over the bottom 10 mountain sects will at most be capable of being a leader of a flock of chickens." Several disciples were full of indignance as they walked past them. Some youths opened their mouths and wanted to say something but eventually chose not to. Indeed, senior brother Dragon King from Nifengyu had not defeated a Dan Realm disciple. And that's senior brother Su Fa. They lifted their heads and looked at the leaderboard of youths in the Hong Immortal sect. First, Hong Tianda. Budding Realm. Second, Piao Lingxue. Budding Realm. Third, Ao Shuwen. Budding Realm. The name of the Dragon King isn't something he is qualified to be addressed as. Tianyi Swordsman, Hong Tianda. Wandering Snow Sword, Piao Lingxue. Fengyan Sword, Ao Shuwen. All of them are in the Budding Realm. Moreover, all of them are ranked in the top 20 among the younger generation of disciples in the Hong Immortal sect. He will only be considered as one of the most outstanding talents in the Hong Immortal sect after he gets into the top 20. Before that, who the hell is the Dragon King? While the crowd was in awe with the frantic advancement of Nifengyu up the ranking charts, most of the disciples in the top 10 mountain sect were nonchalant. In their eyes, an 11th ranked mountain wasn't something that would impress them. So what if he defeated 8 mountain sects alone? Does he have the guts to challenge our mountain sect? We will teach that Dragon King how to be humble. Calling himself the Dragon King. Is he qualified to accept this title? Chapter 559, Art of Water Refining. Yongchang City was the most prosperous central area and the only city in the Yongchang world. A total population of 10 million lived in the city, along with the surrounding villages. But many of them here were ordinary people. Yongchang City serviced 3 immortal sects. After a long time development, the city had become an ancient bustling city. There were taverns, restaurants, weapon stores, forging workshops, and elixir stores for both ordinary and martial artists. You name it, they had it. Inborn spiritual weapons were for sale, along with high-level elixir pills, which could be purchased with spiritual stones. Senior brother Ao, I wonder, how long does it take for the spiritual energy in Yongchang Cauldron to be depleted? Today, I saw the outside world. Looks interesting. This isn't a good thing for us. It's the age of Dharma decline outside. The spiritual energy in Yongchang will be reduced by 2 to 3 times then. Our world is too small, and it's so boring. The world outside is big. How interesting it would be if we could roam around in the underworld. Brother Nan, the Dan Realm experts in the underworld can conquer a territory. Then, wouldn't we be dominating the underworld if we go out? The martial artists in the outside world are trash. Oh, I heard some junior brothers mention that there's an outstanding disciple who emerged from Nifengyu. His name is the Dragon King, who knocked out 8 mountain sects alone and promoted Nifengyu's ranking from 19th to 11th. Dragon King. Ha, the disciples are talking big nowadays. He's at most a Dan Realm expert. Such a person is not in our league. Back at the top floor of a restaurant, there were 5 young men exchanging conversations with broad smiles. A young man in the middle revealed a faint smile as he looked out the window as though there was nothing worth his attention. In the Hong Immortal sect, all the experts had their own circles. Even with the appearance of the Dragon King today, they just chuckled and forgot about it. As soon as Wang Xian returned to his residence at Nifengyu, he picked up the manual of Dahong Immortal Sect Swordsmanship. Illusory Sword, Water Sword. Following these up would be the Sword of Extreme Frost and Sword of Extreme Heat. Illusory Sword, Water Sword, Sword of Extreme Frost, and Sword of Extreme Heat are just types of application using water energy. Water Tear's Blade is considered a sword technique. But other than that, there aren't any other sword or battle techniques. Wang Xian read the content in the manual with brows furrowed. I better head to the scriptures depository for the real battle techniques, and I must be quick. It would be better still if I could get some resources like spiritual grass or weapons. Wang Xian. Just when he was in his thoughts, Mentor Yu called out to him. Wang Xian looked up and saw Mentor Yu walking to him. Your strength surprised me. Radiance flickered in Mentor Yu's eyes, who appeared slightly emotional. Wang Xian smiled and said nothing. Since he arrived at this place, his words had reduced significantly. After all, he belonged to the outside world. You promoted Mtifengyu to 11th place. This time, the resources for Mtifengyu will be greatly increased. Do you have anything you want? Anything that can help you in your cultivation? Asked Mentor Yu to Wang Xian, looking at him. I want to enter the scriptures depository. Wang Xian answered frankly. After a slight hesitation, he asked again, Mentor Yu, does Yongchang have any huge lakes around? I have a token that allows access to the scriptures depository with me. Since I'm not using it, you can take it. We don't have any huge lakes around here, just some small streams. Mentor Yu handed him a token. Her. Wang Xian froze for a moment as he was startled, seeing the token. The ranking of a mountain sect determines how much resources the mentor can receive. Take this token, and you can enter the scriptures depository. The time remaining for your stay is around 1 day. Mentor Yu continued to explain, next month, all of you will receive 5 hours of reading time in the scriptures depository. At the same time, you can enter the first story of the scriptures depository. Wang Xian nodded. Thank you, Mentor Yu. You're welcome. This is what you deserve. You don't have to hurry with the challenges of other mountain sections. Pace it according to your strength, and no casualties allowed. Mentor Yu reminded Wang Xian. Wang Xian nodded. Mentor Yu, I would like to go to the scriptures depository and pick some battle techniques. Okay, go on. Mentor Yu nodded with a smile as she watched him riding on his sword to the main peak. The main peak was the most eye-catching one amongst peaks of Dahong Immortal Sect. Before the main peak was a 1,000-meter-wide waterfall with several towering peaks surrounding it. The scriptures depository was right beside the main peak. It was situated at the top of a big and tall building. The building was about 50 meters tall, and looked extremely lofty. Wang Xian rode his sword and came to the scriptures depository. He gazed around as soon as he arrived. He saw disciples walking in with identity tokens in their hands. When Wang Xian came to the door, he handed the token to a middle-aged man beside him. Mentor's token. You have 25 hours remaining in it. You can enter the second story, and the first story will not consume time in the token. Wang Xian nodded and entered. The large number and myriad of books in the scriptures depository of Dahong Immortal Sect really widened Wang Xian's horizons. In particular, the first story. However, there were not many books on cultivation, but rather, a variety of general knowledge books. Thousands of people stayed put on the first story, but it was nothing to such a massive library. Oh, this is the map of Yongchang World. Wang Xian walked over immediately when he saw a map in an eye-catching spot. Yongchang City is huge. Wang Xian scanned the map and memorized the entire map. After he surveyed the books around him, he went up to the second floor. An array. There's a protection array on the second floor. Without the token, no one can enter here. If the token does not come with enough corresponding energy, access is prohibited too. Wang Xian exclaimed in surprise. An immortal sect is, indeed, an immortal sect. After he entered it, he noticed that the second floor was much smaller than the first story. However, a variety of secret cultivation manuals and guidebooks written by experts based on their experiences could be found over here. Battle techniques. Wang Xian murmured as he swept his gaze around. There were a few hundred disciples on the second floor, looking down, reading their books with seriousness. This place was different from the first story, as the time limit was exercised here. Nobody dared to waste any time at all. Path of Swords. Path of Water Applications. Art of Water Refining. Wang Xian hurriedly headed to the three distinct zones. But he went to the Art of Water Refining zone, instead of the Path of Swords zone. What's the difference between water refining and inferno refining? With doubt in his eyes, Wang Xian immediately walked to it. As soon as he saw the book on the Art of Water Refining, he quickly flipped it open and began reading. No alchemy furnace, forging table, hammer required. Only for refining elixir pills and spiritual weapons that are levels below thyself. This art of water refining is so convenient. Wang Xian's eyes were gleaming, as he had thought of a quick way to gain resources. Chapter 560, Another Insane Aspect of the System. Ding! Mastered Art of Water Refining. Refine all equipment with the origin source water. Refine all equipment with the origin source water. Wang Xian's lips curved into a smile. What's the most lucrative business? Refining equipment and elixir pills. With the almost cheating level origin source flame to refine, Wang Xian had never failed and the effects of his refining were 100% retained. He could fully rely on this method to earn a huge amount of resources. If he could obtain sufficient elixir pills and spiritual equipment, he could consume these elixir pills to boost his strength or keep them to be distributed to the Dragonians or members of the Dragon Palace subsequently. Otherwise, how could they ever match up to the people from Yongchang World? Wang Xian also knew that other than Yongchang World, there were 9 other cauldron worlds. In perhaps a few years, they would all surface in the real world. Wang Xian's eyes beamed as he looked towards the direction of the Path of Swords. He walked straight towards it. What is this? When he entered the region of the Path of Sword, Wang Xian saw various jade stones on top of books and scriptures. There weren't many jade stones, with each one being separated by a certain distance. In the entire region, there were only 7 jade stones. Battle Techniques Imaging. Inject spiritual and mental energy into the jade stones to see the images of battle techniques. Imaging. Could it be similar to the jade stone I saw earlier today that are capable of recording? Spirit arrays are indeed exceptionally mystical. Wang Xian was in awe. He picked up the jade stone and found a line of instructions below it. Water clone. Water clone? What's the difference between this and the water clone I'm capable of creating? Wang Xian was slightly shocked. He held the jade stone with both hands, focused his mind and injected spiritual energy into it. Wang! The next instant, a mystical image appeared in the mind of Wang Xian. A human figure started demonstrating before his eyes. The circulation of water energy, control. The demonstration lasted for a full 30 seconds. As compared to what Wang Xian had come up with previously, this water clone was more perfected and agile. Ding! Master Preliminary Battle Technique, Water Clone. At this moment, the voice of the system sounded, shocking Wang Xian completely. A notification from the system. It's a notification from the system. All along, there had been extremely few notifications from the system. Other than the exceptions of the construction of the Dragon Palace and mastering refining arts, there weren't any other notifications. He had not expected the system to prompt that he had mastered Water Clone after watching the battle techniques imaging. Could it be that I have to fulfill a certain requirement before the system will release a notification? This system is really lonesome. If it could issue missions, rewards or an item exchange framework, it would then be perfect. My own development still has to rely on myself. How depressing. Wang Xian heaved a huge sigh. However, what Wang Xian didn't know was that a divine dragon didn't need to master any battle techniques. Once he achieved the first divine dragon transformation, he would automatically receive the legacy of superpower. Superpower was a tier above battle techniques. However, it was also because Wang Xian wasn't certain of the path ahead that he could open a path to invincibility that belonged only to him. In Wang Xian's mind, the foundation had to be solid. It would always be great to acquire more knowledge. The reason why powerful humans could slay a dragon was exactly that they had mastered a range of subjects. Wang Xian placed the battle technique's imaging jadestone back in its original position. He looked around and realized something really interesting. There were at least several hundred secret manuals in the entire region. All of them were explanations on water clone and one's understanding. The crux of mastering water clone. The control and use of water clone. The control of multiple water clones. The correct application of water clone. There were several hundred such books with the names of certain experts left on them. Wang Xian even saw an explanatory book on water clone by Sword Immortal Hong Yun that was placed in the middle of this region. Sword Immortal. An existence that was likely in the immortal realm. It would seem that mastering water clone wouldn't be easy for other disciples. They might even need several or even dozens of years to understand. As for myself, I'm feeling like I have mastered all the important aspects of water clone in an instant. Wang Xian's eyes beamed with excitement. He walked to the other battle technique's imaging jadestone. Sword. Preliminary sword edge storm technique. Wang Xian lifted the battle technique's imaging jadestone and started deciphering. Ding. Mastered preliminary battle technique, sword edge. Sword edge. Creating the blade of the sword with extremely chilling water. A disciple that I fought in the day seemed to be using this move. However, he was easily defeated as there is a huge difference in strength between him and me. Wang Xian's eyes beamed with excitement. Sword edge could be used for ranged attacks and close combat. Continue. Ding. Mastered preliminary battle technique, instant shift. Ding. Mastered preliminary battle technique, sword imprisonment. Ding. Mastered preliminary battle technique, sword explosion. Ding. Mastered preliminary battle technique, sword cloud. Ding. Moss. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.